And welcome back to this week's episode of the Late for Load In podcast. I'm Chris. I'm here with my co-host Josh. And on this week's episode, we have the oh-so-handsome Telle Smith of The Word Alive, one of my longest friends or longest friendships in the music industry. And he is possibly, and Josh, I'm sure you will agree with this, but probably one of the most likable people in the music industry. I don't know if you could find somebody who would tell you that they don't like Telle.
I never heard a bad thing about the guy.
Never in my life. He's so sweet. And yeah, I don't know. He's just been the coolest guy from the very first day I met him. And this was a really fun talk. We talk about, how he almost wasn't a musician. He was very invested into sports. He was very successful in his high school sports career and had what looked like a very promising future in sports until he decided that he was gonna make the transition into music. And he pretty much uprooted his life for that, right?
Yeah, it feels like it's become a pretty common thread with all these guys that we've gotten the opportunity to talk to. It's like, just take the risk, jump in, feet first, don't necessarily know when, why, sometimes even how to do the job or the position, but we just kind of figure out how to make it work and go from there.
Yeah, and just he even touches on how we need to be supporting the younger up and coming artists if we want to really continue to foster the growth of this underground world of music that we all love and live within. And he also talks about they've been a band for quite a while now. They've seen quite a growth and evolution in the band, and he just talks about at this point just make sure that you love what you're doing, and that's the ultimate goal, right? Really prioritize making sure that what you are creating and putting out into the world is something that you feel authentic and confident in, and that as long as that's your priority and main goal, then you're doing the right thing. And so, and I as somebody who's been involved with putting out quite a bit of music at this point and had my own personal tastes change over time, I can't agree with that more. That is the ultimate goal. We all just want to be stoked on what we're doing, right?
Definitely. And then the secret to longevity, and not only in the music business or being in a band, but in life and relationship and everything, is communication, right? Talking through issues, talking through good times, bad times, all of it, airing it out, being transparent is the key to success.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trapped in the steel tube that is a tour bus or a van or whatever.
What did Brian call it? The pirate ship? The
pirate ship, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's my new go-to, the pirate ship.
When you're trapped in the pirate ship with, 5 to 11 other people, depending on what your traveling situation is, and you're living on top of each other, man, if you can't figure out how to communicate, it's a recipe for disaster. So, and obviously being a band for as long as The Word Alive has, that's, obviously been a key to keeping that whole thing moving forward. So
definitely.
Yeah, it was really good to get some of his insight on that. So yeah, I think as always, I think it's a great episode. Telle's one of my favorite people on the planet, such a sweet guy.
As mine.
Yeah, and I think everybody's going to enjoy this one. So on that note, enjoy this week's episode with Telle Smith of The Word Alive. This episode of Late for Load-In is brought to you by Rockabilia.com, your go-to destination for 100% official band merchandise. No bootlegs, no cheap knockoffs, just authentic gear straight from the bands you love. From metal and punk to classic rock and beyond, Rockabilia has over 500,000 items in stock. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, patches, and even rare, hard-to-find collectibles. If you're looking for something exclusive, Rockabilia drops brand new limited edition merch every month. So if you see something you like, grab it before it's gone. And in fact, we just placed an order for some new merch ourselves. I picked up a very, very cool Linkin Park Meteora hoodie. Josh, did you grab something?
Yeah, I grabbed a couple things. I got a super limited Eminem tour shirt, and then what you mentioned not missing out. I saw a Meatloaf tour shirt from 2005 that I really, really wanted. Unfortunately, I didn't have my size, so I missed out on that one.
Well, there you have it. Don't wait. Our friends at Rockabilia are hooking up Late for Load-In listeners with 10% off when you use code LOAD at checkout. So if your band tee collection needs a refresh and you want to support the artists who make the music we love, hit up rockabilia.com, load up your cart, and drop in code LOAD, LOAD, for that sweet discount. Now let's roll today's show. Telle, you beautiful SOBU, welcome to the Late for Load-In podcast. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us. I appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, of course. As someone who's rarely late for load-in, could be late for every load-in.
I'm going to be honest. You may be the only singer ever to say that you're not typically late for loading, because all of you singers are. You're just a special breed of singer then, I guess.
It's true. Like how I view it is if I'm like around and I see people like loading, it feels weird to just watch them load and I just stand there. Or like, I'm like holding my bag. I'm like, where's the green room? And everyone's like, I'm just like, so. But also there are times where, I'm either not feeling good or, have to be out for whatever reason. So I don't make every load in actually. But I do know that on tours I'm on, I've never seen any singer load more.
This is going to date when we're recording this because this won't come out for a few weeks, but I just got home from Shiprocked 2 days ago, and we played our second set of Shiprocked in like the theater. And Dead opened the theater that day, and so I was like there early, setting up with our crew guys, and introduced myself to the Dead guys. And
had you never met them?
I've chatted with Joe and Kyle a bunch on social media, but I've never met them in person. They're the sweetest dudes.
Oh, dude, I've known Joe for
you guys are all you guys are all from Arizona. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, I love Joe. Very much.
Super cool. But I was talking to Joe specifically, and he was like, "What are you doing here so early? Are you you running sound for other bands for fun or something? Like, why are you here like so long?" Because it was like,
because I'm a gear nerd.
Yeah, because it was like 4:00 and we didn't play till 11:30. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" It's like, because I like gear. And also on the other side of that too is like, our guitar tech Nick is a full-blown badass, but he's teching for 3 guys and setting up a ton of gear, and also our playback tech at the same time. I like,
tell the truth.
Well, yes, it is because I like gear, and I also have a little bit of a control issue.
Okay? That's where I was going. Okay, good. At least you admitted it. I was just waiting.
Gosh, I was, because I was like, I know what that underlying thing is.
It's and it has nothing to do with not trusting anybody, because I fully trust Nick with my life. It's just that I like to be there for setup, because then I know that it's done how I want it done.
Yeah. Okay, as long as you admit it.
Yeah. But the other side of it too is like, 2 crew guys on a cruise manning all of our gear and all this shit. Like, if I'm around and not doing anything, you better believe that I'm going to get in there and help them, because I start to feel guilty. You know what I mean?
What's like, fucked up about that?
What's that?
You could have had 3 crew guys, but for some reason I must have missed the call. I don't know what happened, but I didn't get the invite for that one.
I want everyone to know that we've tried to get Josh to just be our full-time tour manager for years, and he's told me to go fuck myself.
But what about a cruise though? Have you ever asked me to go on a cruise?
I do think a cruise is like open, like, hey, if you need a crew member for the cruise,
see,
I got you.
Telly, you're supposed to be on my side with this. As the other guy in the band here.
He's not, because it's reality.
Look, listen, here's the thing that I'm thinking. I also would be crew. Say we're not doing Shiprock, you guys are. Like, you need a liaison. You need an artist liaison. You need someone who's gonna just pamper you, and maybe I walk around and give you compliments to everyone. I walk around the ship. I spend 3 hours a day just being like, Ghost Inside is the best band on this band.
Have you met Chris? He's such a great guy.
Great ass.
What a great dude.
All right. Well, I'll go fuck myself now. You guys have officially made me feel like a giant piece of shit.
I'm just saying that because someone turned down touring full time is different than, hey man, you think you might want to go on a cruise? Like, if you turn down a cruise, you're a fucking idiot.
I feel like in general there are definitely like those, exceptions where you're like, okay, you're going to go play Hawaii, and you're there for 5 days, and you need someone to be, I'm there.
Yeah.
All the fun places you could possibly go, Josh is like, oh yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. You going to Australia and you're going to fly to every show? Yeah, sure.
All right, fair. Fine, you guys got me. I fucked up.
So we admitted 2 things today. We're good. We're on a good track.
All right. All right, let's move on with our lives now and get to what people actually want to know.
Listen, we've been friends for a lot of years, right? And I don't think that I've ever asked you this question, but your name is actually Tyler. Where did Telle come from? How did you adopt Telle? When, where, why?
The short story is I joined this band, and the drummer was named Tyler. And everyone at practice was like, I am having the hardest time, like, and you're the new guy, so you need a nickname. And no one had ever given me a nickname. And so I was like, well, if you can come up with one that I don't hate, sure, I guess, And so they kept trying to come up with different ones. I was like, no.
What were some of them? Do you remember any of them?
I don't, but they were because they were so random. Like when I tell you why Telle became Telle. Like, it makes sense. But everything else they were saying, you know, it'd be like Top Gun, it'd be like Maverick or Goose, or it was just some like random thing where I was like, I'm not going to go by like something random just because I happen to have the same name as the drummer. And so I was the guy, though, I was going to college still at this time. And basically, while I was in classes, I was constantly like researching venues and venue contacts and like how to like get your band booked at like this bar or this coffee shop or whatever it was, this venue. Find bands who are like looking for, you know, show swaps, like, hey, we'll give you a show in Lexington if you give us a show in, you know, Dayton or Cincinnati or whatever it was. So I was always like taking calls and like rehearsal, I'd be like playing guitar or doing something, and I would get a call and be like, I have to take this, it's blah, blah, blah. And so one day I take a call and, you know, the band stops playing and the bass player was like, that's it, Telle. Like, because you're always having to take phone calls. But he was like, but not with a Y, because that's lame. And so he made it Telle. And then I had that nickname like in that band. And I wasn't in it even a super long time, you know, band dissolved. I ended up trying out for this band to be their singer from a MySpace bulletin. That band became In Fear and Faith. And I drove across the country to California. I didn't say goodbye to my family, didn't say anything. And I was just like, I'm just going to go drive out from Ohio and try out. I'll probably come home. My mom like was doing a travel nursing job up north in California. And I was like, I'll go from San Diego when I don't get it. And I'll just go like surprise her. Well, I got it and I never came home. And then, so it's just going on. But what I did is I tried to go by Tyler again, but there was a Tyler in that band too. And he was a bass player. And so I went by Telle in Fear and Faith. And then after I left In Fear and Faith, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go by Tyler. But by that time, I had made like just enough of a name for myself that I'd be like, oh, Tyler. And people like, I don't know. And I'd be like, Telle? They're like, oh, yeah. And it just clicked with me then. I'm like, there are probably going to be a million Tylers in the music industry, but hopefully only one Telle. And so it just stuck.
Was your MySpace name Telle?
It was
if it wasn't Telle Terrific or something like that, then you weren't a scene kid and you're a fake.
Yeah.
True.
What? I think it
or
was
like Telle Terrible or something awful like
Telle
that.
Terrible is sick.
I'm trying to think what it was. I think it was just like Frontman Telle or something dumb.
But
is
Telle
on
was in
Facebook,
there.
Has been for like 15 years or whatever. But it was something not that cool. But before then, I did have very MySpace names like X blah blah blah, you know, all that stuff.
Were you doing the high angle selfies and shit too?
Oh, I have the worst. I have one.
We all did.
I have a one where it's like from above, I'm wearing a bandana, have like crazy scene hair, my shirt's off, my American Apparel like underwear just showing just enough so you know I'm wearing American Apparel.
Oh yeah.
And those were the days where like I could eat just hot dogs to survive and I still like looked good somehow.
Yep.
So I look back on them and they're very cringy, but I'm also like, dude, you were living in that time and you can't hide that.
They're so cringe to look at now, but that is what was cool back then.
Yeah.
I hope mine never resurface. I don't know what
I would
happened
love
to
to
him.
see yours.
I don't know what happened to him.
I would love to show all your Florida friends
Fuck.
that version of you.
Telle, I'm going to text you a band.
He's got some good stuff.
I'm going to text you a band promo from mine and Josh's first band in my grandparents' front yard.
Ooh.
It's crazy. Josh was probably 16 at the oldest.
Yeah, maybe.
It's crazy. I'm going to send it to you right after this.
Okay. I will be excited to see that.
Fuck. You know what? When I agreed to do this, I never took into consideration that Chris definitely
Ass is going to get dug up.
He's definitely got some pictures and some sounds of things that I just don't ever want to revisit.
They're going to get into the world. It's just a matter of time.
You should figure out how to do some like subliminal like flashes, and it's just like all these cringy photos of Josh
He's gonna
over
put
the
like
years.
face overlays over top of my actual face.
It's going to happen. Give it time. You've also now put this into the ether of this show, so it's just a matter of time before it happens. You should have never brought it up.
Guys, I gotta go. I don't know. I think I had an appointment for 12:30.
I'm sure you do have an appointment. Actually.
It's okay. When you disappear from the call, then I'm just going to put one of these pictures as your thumbnail for the rest of the call.
Be right back. His be right back thing. Yep. It's just the worst photo of him.
All right, I'll stay.
I completely forgot that you were in in Fear and Faith. How long were you in that band?
Like the first year, so we started, I want to say like late spring or something like that, and we recorded the first EP, Voyage, in the summer, I think, of 2007. Our first tour, I think, was with Memphis May Fire, Oceana, and someone. It was a cool like lineup that like a bunch of us are still obviously friends today.
Yeah.
And then we had like our CD like came out and it was crushing. We were fully independent. We're getting all these offers from labels, but my last show was the official CD release of this EP at Soma, because we were on tour and I broke my ankle night one. And then, but I'm like, well, I can't like go get it casted. Like, so I get all these things, wrap it, put in a brace, and I'm like miserable. It's a October, November, but it's like freezing cold. It's a winter tour. And so I'm like on crutches, there's ice. Like it was just like terrible. I was getting no sleep because, as they would go on to be known for, they love to party. Those guys, which, you know, we're all friends today, but back then I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Because I had left my family. I drove across the country. I'm like, I'm going to be in this serious band and I want to be good. And it was just a shit show because it would be like every night, who's going to drive? And everyone was drunk. And so I'm like driving with a broken ankle, not sleeping, singing songs that are so high that like I'm losing my voice. And I was just like, my life is just not good. We did a showcase for Stuart Taggart, who is no longer with us, but he was like tour manager for Blink back in the day. He ran Science Records. He was a manager for Bless the Fall, and then my next band, Greeley Estates. And so we did a showcase for him. He came up to me after the show. This is like right before I left, which was honestly, I'd say, weighted probably like 50% of why I left when I left. And he was just like, call me when you quit this band. Because he knew, like, everyone was like fucked up and drinking all this. And I was like trying to do that. I was going to the merch. I was hanging out with fans. And he was like, call me when you quit this band. He just knew. And if you ever knew Stuart, and for those of you who did, like, he was what the industry calls like a bulldog. He had probably more people who hated him than loved him. But if he fucked with you, like, he would move mountains to help you and to do whatever he could. He was a great dude. He like lived off caffeine and he ended up having a heart attack, many years later. But I call him when I leave the band and he says, I know you want to sing. I have this band that just is working on this record and it's really, really good. And they need someone who can play bass and sing. And I hear you can play bass and guitar. I had never played bass in my life. I played guitar, but like, not great, but I told him, yeah. I was like, okay. And I was like, I'll meet him. And like we met somewhere, I think like the Hurley Studios, hung out, and they were like the sweetest, nicest guys, so like welcoming and such a breath of fresh air from the experience I just had that I was like, sure, I'll move to Arizona if like I get it. And so my tryout was I had to learn like 19 songs in 6 days on bass. I didn't have a bass. I never played bass. I had to borrow some stuff, practice, got close enough, went to rehearsals. I learned the singing parts. So I like nailed the singing parts. I trashed the bass parts. Like I think I ended up learning actually only like 6 songs. And it was between me and a guy named David Ludlow, who would later actually replace me in Greeley, but he joined Dead for a while. It was all a very like crisscross time, but I think it was like everyone was trying to figure out like where they fit in, what they liked. There was no like understanding. We're all starting in the industry, and it was never my intention to like go from one band to another band. I just knew like something in my core was just like, this isn't for you, and the longer you do something that isn't for you does not make sense. And so cut that off. I go try out. They're like, listen, you need to practice a lot at bass, but you do the things that no one else we've had try out can do, which is all the singing stuff. We had like, I think another week or two before we played a headlining show. And yeah, I learned like 17 songs, played it pretty good. Loved being in the band. We did Warped Tour together. That's how I met August Burns Red, This Is the Apocalypse, like that we were in that era, all the Alisana, Scarlet Drive, like who else? Skites Airplane, like those bands, like we did tours together. But we started to write new music, and what ended up happening was that record, Let the Go West, Young Man, Let the Evil Go East, such a tongue twister album. I thought that was going to be like the sound of the band. And when I joined, the idea was I was going to do more singing on the next record, and Ryan was going to take a step back maybe from singing and focus more on screaming. And we were going to do like a heavy Taking Back Sunday kind of vibe. Like that was the idea. Well, then we started writing all this new stuff, and it was basically like death metal. And so I was like, well, this isn't what I signed up for, and this isn't like what I resonate with or connect with. So I left that band, and that's what led to The Word Alive. And here we are today.
Crazy. I fucking forgot you were in Greeley Estates also.
Yeah.
Did you do
I
the
figured I was just going to cover all the bases with that one.
Yeah, did you do the August Burns Red tour that was like ABR Skytes Airplane Greeley? So
Yeah.
I would have even fucking seen you in Greeley and just never connected the dots. That's crazy. Wild. And luckily for you, being a bass player in a metalcore band, pretty low bar to have to hit too. So if you've never played bass before, you're probably still fine playing bass in a metalcore band. You're totally fine.
Yep. It was mostly like memorizing the different chug patterns. That was
exactly.
Part. It's like, oh, so this song is cha-chung, cha-chung, cha, and this song is cha-chung, chung, chung. You know, it's like
exactly.
Like that.
Well, interesting. Yeah, you just blew my mind because I fully forgot about all of these phases of Telle. So let's go back even before all of that. Like, what were the early days of Tyler before you were Telle? Like, what was all of that like?
So I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I went the majority of from K through 12 to private Christian school in Centerville, Ohio. Left for a while, went to this public school in Miamisburg, and then we moved around a little bit. My parents separated and divorced 5 and 6, and then kind of just like bounced around for a lot of years. But my parents, for whatever reason, they meant well, but they just felt like if we can spend all of our money to send our kids to this school, then they'll have a better life than we did. And I'm like, well, that didn't go to plan. But I went to the school. I like dove in. Sports were my life. I have like multiple school records, I think, still at my school. I played basketball, baseball, track, soccer, track and field. So, like I did everything that I could do. That was kind of like my identity, really, was like sports for the majority of my childhood. I discovered through my friend Johnny, it was either Korn or Deftones first, but it was one of those bands, like, was like the start, and Limp Bizkit were like the start of me hearing something and being like, I want to listen to that. And then like breaking away from the music my parents listened to, or like the radio. And so then those bands led me to Linkin Park. And that was the band that I literally remember feeling these lyrics. I'm hearing the lyrics and I'm feeling them, and it feels something like I feel. And I never made that connection before, because music was just like this thing. And my parents loved playing music. My mom was like in the choir. My dad was as well for a number of years. They always were listening to music. You know, when people ask me, like, did you grow up in a musical home? And I'm like, no one like played instruments or was trying to be a musician, but there was always music on.
That was very similar for me too. No one in my family plays, but there was always music playing.
Yeah.
Whether it was my grandmother like blasting John Denver through the house, or like getting in the car with my mom and it was 80s hair metal, or like 90s country music, or riding with my dad and it was Metallica. Like music was always around, but nobody played. It was very, very similar for me.
Yeah. And so like, it was also very normal in my house that like everyone was just kind of like singing along to stuff. Like we wouldn't talk, we would just sing to songs. You know, like we drive to go see my grandparents in Tennessee. My dad would play music and we would just sing the whole time. Like I don't think I ever remember, other than a pause in the music of we're going here, we're stopping here, or this is the only time you can go to the bathroom. You know, I don't remember even having like conversations with my family from like a lot of my younger years. And I think that's just because like they were not great at communicating feelings and things, and they were dealing with their own shit that maybe like they're just like, I just want the music on and just nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to find their release, and I think that that's something that most parents from like our parents' generation, like they weren't taught communication skills or how to like healthily deal with their emotional baggage.
Yeah.
You know what's weird about this this direction that this conversation is going, my mom sent me a thing today. It's like this big long thing about like, I'm sorry for everything that like you grew up with, basically. It was, so this is strange.
I think it's becoming an ever-present topic as like more of our parents' generation becomes online and they're seeing these topics be talked about. I think that
Sure.
the more that they're starting to become aware of these impacts that they unintentionally had on our upbringing. My parents got divorced too when I was young. My parents weren't together. They had me very young. They got married when I was 13, then got divorced again when I was 16, then got back together when I was 21 and had my first of two younger sisters who are 21 and 23 years younger than me. So I've had this whole whirlwind of like this crazy family life. I feel like in a lot of ways, it's a lot of what drove me to want to do this. And like kind of, I always wanted to be on the move and like kind of away from home because I was like avoiding this baggage that I had back at home. But at the same time, I can recognize that like my parents were young. They were raised by people who like didn't tell them how to process things in a healthy manner. And that's not, I don't even blame my grandparents for that. It's just like culturally not a thing that happened at the time. So It's like, it's not, unfortunately not shocking to hear that you like didn't have these kinds of conversations with your family.
I don't know that anybody did back then.
No.
I find it very rare. And when it did happen, I'm just like, wow, that's so amazing. That's so beautiful because, you know, that means your parent or parents were self-aware just enough to seek that out before it was really like, you know, readily available or taught to them. But that definitely was like not the norm. And, you know, it's funny, we were doing a write yesterday and we were kind of all talking about that, about kind of forgiving. You get old enough and we can kind of forgive our parents, you know, along the way, because maybe like say we encounter a situation that like we know they went through and it fucking sucks. And you can be like, holy shit, like this sucks so bad. And you were having to do it while like working full time and having 3 kids and like without any like backup or resources to really help you. So I have like a lot more respect and just like compassion for my parents, and they just didn't have the tools, you know, to do that.
Totally.
And that makes me thankful that whatever happened pushed me into like, yeah, like music became the thing I could hold on to and be like, okay, well, I feel this way. And so I just kept connecting deeper and deeper with music. And much like sports, like there is a sense of like belonging and camaraderie and teamwork involved in being in a band. So I think I like naturally just like gravitated towards being in a band because the one thing I had always growing up that I knew and loved was sports and was like working together, but obviously like individually trying to excel and be the best at the same time. So I felt like there was a lot of correlation between the two. So I was in college and I was working full time and I just couldn't stop thinking about music. And I was just like, holy shit, like I think I need to try to do this. And I didn't even know, like the idea of me trying to do music was not what it became. It was just, I think I need to take this time in my life and try to go like do this for fun and just see what happens. I was not like, I need to make this a career. I wasn't thinking that way. It just, I don't even think I started thinking that way actually until year 3 or something of the Word Alive. So I had already been like touring and it still didn't like really hit me that I'm like, oh, like this, at this point, this has been your career. You just didn't know it yet.
Well, yeah, I also think you get raised with the concept of like, being a musician is not a real job or not a viable job, not a reality, right?
Some people still think that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you add on top of it the type of music that we're all in.
Right.
And then it's become to the you know, the average person, it's like that yelling, screaming, loud, distorted trash. Like there's no way that can be a job. So like whether you believe that or not, it's like ingrained in the back of your mind. It fully does take a minute for you to step back and be like, this is actually my job now. That's pretty cool.
I'm curious how your parents reacted when you decided you were going to quit sports and go to music. Because I remember when I played a lot of baseball growing up, and I remember when I quit baseball to pursue music. I feel like I remember my dad like being really, really upset because growing up, you know, as a dad, and even now that I'm a dad, like my son is super into soccer, and like I want to see him well, first of all, I want to see him succeed in whatever he wants to do, but we spend a lot of money and effort into him playing soccer, so like I want to see him succeed at least not to say he's going to go be pro, but like I want him to at least get through school playing soccer, and like, that's what he loves. So, but where, I guess where I was going is that I remember my dad being upset. So I'm curious to know how your parents responded. Especially saying that you had like school records and things like that. Like how did they react?
So they have two different stories of it when they look back now.
Yeah.
My dad was very like analytical. My dad's like genius level IQ, worked for Fortune 500 companies doing like ones and zeros. Like he's like a crazy computer IT guy. And so for a lot of years, like I didn't feel like I really resonated with him at all. And then my mom's a nurse, but she was gone a lot doing travel nursing, but she was always the one who was like, we didn't have money, but she would save up and make sure like I had the best basketball shoes I could, or so, like that. Like she was so supportive of me doing sports. And my dad, like he was, but wasn't at the same time. I didn't know this until I had left. But so when I first started it, it was kind of like, I don't think my dad necessarily took it serious, but he wasn't like mad or what. He was just like, if you want to go try this, like, go try it. And he not only did that, but like, he was like, well, if you're going to try it, well, I didn't get you anything for graduation and I would have helped you some with college. So like here, and he helped buy my first like, Ampeg bass cab and nice bass. And he was supportive in that way, but conversationally, it didn't feel like he was believing that it would go anywhere. I think he always thought like I would try it and then just go back to college. My mom has told me so many times that she supported it from day one that I've just adopted that belief. But my dad was like, your mom was so against it because she, like the school thing, going back to childhood, she just felt like you got to go to college. Like she just felt like you have to do this. But she very quickly, I think she saw like one of my first very early shows, and she was the same kind of mom that's like at my games with like annoying with like a cowbell making noise and screaming. She's like, T baby. And I'm like, Mom, stop.
Yeah.
Like she's like that kind of mom. And she was the same way at shows. Like she was like going to the merch table, meeting fans, be like, "Oh, hey, are you one of Tyler's fans?" I'm like, "Mom, it's Telle."
I'm Telle here, Mom.
Yeah, that thing. And but to his credit, like my dad would come out, and it wasn't until I left without saying goodbye, and I didn't come home for 2 years. And I came home and I saw my dad, and he was like, I always wanted to be in a band. And he was like, the difference between you and I is you got in the van and you just did it. And it was the first time my dad told me that I remember that he like respected me essentially. He had said he was proud of me for certain things, like, whatnot, just like more in passing. But my dad's very, like I said, very analytical, didn't show a lot of emotion, was pretty stern and conservative in a lot of ways. And especially like emotionally. And it was not until he was like, oh shit, like not only did you leave and just you figured a way to survive out there and then make it work, but now you came back, and then he saw us play like a sold out show and was just like, I think it was like, oh man, he's doing like this thing that I dreamed of that I would have wanted to do, but like his analytical mind was just like, no, you can't do that. You have to do this.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, like both parents were just super supportive and still are to this day. They come out to every show they possibly can. My mom has seen us in now, I want to say like 6 or 7 states. One of my brothers, both of my brothers have seen me in multiple states, but my brother Travis has seen us in like 9 or 10 states or something like that.
That's awesome.
And so I've had like a very supportive family. For a family that like never talked really like growing up, once I left, our whole family became more, I think, like communicative in a lot of ways.
I'm sure part of it is you start to appreciate the time that you do have together, and you start to make sure that you like take advantage of that.
I kind of forced that on them of like leaving and being the only one who left. And then it's like my family would make it a big deal. Like when I came home, they're like, oh, well, my brother would call off work and my aunt would be like, oh, I'm going to cook dinner. Like it was a thing. And my family never had a thing really before then. It was just, we just did what we did.
What was that though? Like what was it that made you just up and leave? Like where did that come from? And the only reason I ask is because I had a similar situation with my parents, but they left. and I stayed in Maryland. And I wasn't ready to go. Like I was also playing in bands, and I was chasing something. So like I that's why I'm curious. Like, what was it for you that was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna go? Because I was scared when my parents left. I mean, I was 18 years old, and they dropped me off at McDonald's.
I had a similar thing with joining Texas. I had never met any of those dudes in my life.
Yeah.
And I got called and said, hey, will you fill in for this tour? And I had to leave for 6 weeks with dudes that I had never had a full conversation with. And
yeah, were you scared?
Fuck yeah, I was terrified. I was terrified.
We still did it, which is a crazy thing because like how my dad said, it's like we got in the van. And that's like, I think a lot of touring musicians, it's like what I will preface by my answer to you, Josh, is saying, I don't know. Like there is an element to where like a lot of things that we've all done are crazy. And it's like I'm borderline reckless, like things like that. Like, oh, you just get in a van with a bunch of strangers and you leave. Like on that side of things, it's like, holy shit, I do that. But for me, I was like in with bad friends. I went from being like star athlete, honor roll, everything was going good, to like my life was like falling apart, or so it felt. And I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, and I think I just was like, thankfully pushed, pulled, whatever you want to say, guided. Like, I think life was like not working out for me, trying to go against me, trying to fulfill whatever I was meant for in a way. And I really do believe that, because I'm like, it was like anytime I tried to do the safe route or the thing that like made sense, it felt so wrong to me. And so oddly, like the crazy, like get in the van, I didn't feel nervous in a weird way. So I felt kind of the opposite, where
wild.
For some reason, that felt more normal to me than like staying and living this life. And
Sure.
so, which as an adult, I'm like looking back and I'm like, could I do the same thing all over again? I don't think so. Like, because I made a choice, and it was kind of like you double down on that and you double down. And I did that about 1,000+ times before it started to even make sense. And looking back, I'm like, man, I had a really like hard life from 2007 till really 2014. Like, so 7 years of like hard touring, not making money,
Eating shit.
Yeah, not even knowing. Like, I had a whole like year where I don't think my bank account ever got above like $100, and somehow I was okay. And I'm like, I don't know how I did that. And
young and dumb.
Yeah. And that's like the number one like story from so many of my friends that like weren't blessed or fortunate enough with like their parents being able to help them, or they had somehow a remote job even back then, which several people we toured with would, and they would do stuff, or they'd come home to like a really good job. It was just like feast or famine, and somehow we made it. And it's like literally luck of the draw. Like, I don't think I could do it all over again and still get to this point.
No way, dude. Back in the Texas days, we would go on tour. Like, for instance, the tour we met on, which the We Came as Romans tour, was We Car, For Today, Woe Was Me, Word Alive, or was it I think Word Alive, Woe Was Me.
The Motel 6 tour?
Yes.
Rock Yourself to Sleep?
Yep. So Texas was getting paid $100 a night on that tour. And then not really selling shit for merch.
I should look up what we were getting on that tour. I can't remember.
And we probably weren't selling shit for merch because no one knew who the fuck we were back then. And, you know, we would go out and do tours like that all the time, especially for that first like year of really like doing support tours and actually touring full time.
You guys ripped though. I just had to say, you guys ripped back then.
Oh,
it wasn't like you were like open $100 and it was like, you came in hot. You guys were.
We tried.
Yeah, you guys were more than like keeping up.
All the shit that matters didn't matter back then.
Oh, for sure. But
like,
dude,
we just didn't have a care in the world.
No, dude, we
know?
like I said, we'd go on those like 4 or 5 week long tours. I might make $100, $200, and then we'd be off for a month, but I wouldn't work. And then we'd go on another tour, and I would. Now, luckily, I will say that I've been very, very, very blessed by a family that has like really supported me from day one. Like have fully been in my corner. My mom used to load my drum set in the back of her car and drive me to shows when Josh and I were in a band together when I was like
awesome,
like 11 years old.
She drove us to our very first show ever.
Yep, sure did. Like my family's been super supportive
in Virginia.
Yeah, it like the super supportive. So, but I, you know, in saying that, when I was in between tours, like I was still living at home, but I didn't like to ask for help because I knew that I made a choice to go down this path for a career. So I was trying not to live off my parents if I could avoid it. And I don't know how the fuck I made that work.
Yeah.
No,
How, like
it's
I
crazy.
could not stretch $100 for 7 days anymore. How the fuck did I do that for an
you can't
entire
stretch-
month? Now,
You can't
granted,
stretch $100 for one meal. With
right.
Kids,
No, like now,
man.
granted,
Come on.
granted, I have 2 kids and a wife, and we own a house, and we have a dog,
So
and like
what?
so like
Okay.
life is expensive now, right? But
Yes.
like how there, like you're saying, there's no way I could go back and like grind it out the way that I did back then. If the Ghost Inside fell apart tomorrow, I would not be able to start from the ground up again. There's not a chance. I would never try, and I would never be able to.
And
Yeah.
some young bands have unrealistic expectations of how shit goes too. Like they just don't. The grind. It's almost like the grind aspect of being in a band is gone.
Well, you
or
don't have
different.
to grind the way that we did. And,
Right.
and that it's like, sometimes I find myself being like, man, like you guys have it so lucky nowadays. But then also I'm like, I wouldn't trade the experience
Ever.
that I have for anything, because I'm so thankful too. Like I got to go through like the growing pains of like finding my voice, of finding like not my voice just from like the band's perspective, but like, you know, as being a human or being a front man, the energy I put out into the world. Like I got to grow up, and a lot of those years I didn't have the same microscope that I would come to have later. But that's something that like people don't really have nowadays, because while they might not have the experience of being able to go and be shitty for a long time before anyone even knows who you are. And so now, like the first time someone knows about you, it's like, oh, like they sound great. You can have that if you're us. Them, you're either like you faked it on record and then you go to play a show and you're like, oh, this band cannot play their shit, which is very common nowadays. And I feel bad for them because they don't know any other way, and it is technically the right way, I guess, if you want to say, to not blow all your money just touring to tour and like living hard and putting yourself in a position where like, yeah, you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. I'm not saying these bands should do it how we did it, but I don't think everyone has figured out that there is something to be said for like putting in those hours. You don't have to go to a really shitty dive club venue that nothing works and people are still smoking in it somehow to like earn being in a band nowadays. But what I do think would be very valuable for bands to appreciate about our generation of touring musician is we did put in a lot of hours that are the reason we can survive without, you know, if our click tracks go out and we have no electronics, we still can play our instruments. I still can sing and scream. Like I'm not like faking it.
Right.
And now because there's so many tools, I think you find there are a lot of new bands that like they make the record or maybe they pop on TikTok and they blow up, but they're just not ready for that moment. Whereas a lot of our bands, we put in the hours, we put in the years that when the moment comes, like it was just like, okay, well, this is what we've been like training for. This is what we've been working towards. And so I do
you didn't
feel
get
like
that moment.
Yeah, I do feel like some of the new bands are at a disadvantage because yes, it's easier than ever to pop, to go viral, to have a fan base out of nowhere, but it's so much harder to be ready for that moment. And so I feel for them at the same time.
Yeah, that's a completely valid point because, you know, we look at bands like, you know, Sleep Token and Bad Omens are probably the best example of bands in recent years that have like, from our world anyway, that have like really popped and like kind of exploded to the next level. Like the bands that were definitely growing on their own, but you know, TikTok and stuff like for sure accelerated that growth. But both of those bands had been doing it for a while, so they were able to step up to the plate and like knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
If that same thing happened to like a brand new band and they had to go be a headliner on a festival somewhere, they probably wouldn't even know
what to do,
where to start.
And they wouldn't have the team and infrastructure to even help them do it right.
Today's show is sponsored by Bestronix Pro Audio. Let's be real. Your rig is only as solid as the cables running through it. Whether you're touring the world or building out your dream setup at home, you need quality cables that won't let you down. That's where Bestronix Pro Audio comes in. BTPA specializes in full tour rig builds, custom cabling solutions, and if you're the hands-on DIY type, they've got bulk cable and connectors so you can wire up your own setup exactly how you want it. Everything they make is road-tested, built to last, and trusted by the pros. And because you're part of the Late for Load-In crew, BTPA is giving you 10% off your order. Just use the code LFLI10 at checkout and save on the best cables in the business. So don't let bad cables kill your tone or ruin your set. Hit up btpa.com, lock in that discount, and keep your rig dialed and ready for the road. We all know that music isn't just sound, it's connection, it's healing, it's everything when you're feeling lost. That's why Late for Load-In is partnering with Heart Support, the nonprofit founded by Jay Klurs of August Burns Red to bring real, free peer support straight to you.
Are you feeling down and need someone to talk to? Just text Late for Load-In to 1-512-647-2871 and get connected with someone who understands, someone who gets how music pulls us through the hardest times. It's totally free, totally judgment-free, and 100% about supporting you through the music we love.
And if you're in a good place right now, you can be part of healing the scene. Heart Support is looking for volunteer repliers, fans like you who want to help others through the power of music. You'll be trained to support fellow fans who are struggling and join a community built on connection, mental health, and the music that keeps us going.
And again, if you need support, text Late for Load-In to the number 1-512-647-2871. If you want to be support, sign up at heartsupport.com/volunteer. Together, we're making this scene stronger.
Today's episode is brought to you by you, our incredible listeners and patrons over at patreon.com/LFLIpod. By joining, you'll get early access to episodes, exclusive monthly giveaways featuring rare memorabilia from Josh and I's time on the road, and access to our patron-only music review and reaction live streams. But that's not all. You'll also get into the Late for Load-In Road Crew Discord, where you can connect with fellow fans, submit guest requests, and drop your questions for the show. The best part? It's just $1 a month. If you love what we're doing and want to help keep the show rolling, head over to patreon.com/LFLIpod and join the road crew today. Now, back to the show. I've seen some bands who have not in the same way exploded, but definitely had some like TikTok success that has helped accelerate the growth of their band. And they're still a pretty young band. And I've seen them in the past year. People are definitely excited to see them, but the show that they're putting on and the way they carry themselves is like I can tell, and maybe only I could tell, maybe only we would be able to tell because we've been doing this for so long. But when I look at them, I go, you're missing the road experience.
Yeah.
Like you've definitely got some of the pieces, but to me, and maybe I'm just that jaded old guy yelling at clouds right now, but to me, they're missing like some pretty big fundamental pieces. And I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of that stuff.
So too, there's a misconception on how it actually works too.
Sure,
they don't understand the ins and outs of how it actually works because there has been no learning. There's been the experience is, I guess, the word that comes key to this is that they haven't gone through those experiences where you've completely failed to learn from that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I mean by there's like, it's both is they don't have that and that they are just doing all they know. But just like us getting the experience of going to shows, their fans don't have the experience of going to shows. Right. They are coming from a platform. So when you say like, is it just me who knows? It's probably 50-50. I bet like a chunk of their fans don't know that it shouldn't sound like that or it shouldn't look that way because they're just coming, which is great for the scene because there's a bunch of new blood coming into it. But for every person who's like us, who like, it's like, oh, wow, like, is anyone else seeing this right now? No, a lot of those fans aren't because they don't know, which is cool because then when we get to play, you hope they get to see that. And then that doesn't make them not like that band. It just makes them want to help that band grow to that point even more, which I feel like this new generation of fan loves growing with a band in a way that is really cool because as it feels so fickle sometimes, but I do feel like there are a lot of like diehard fans that are instantly becoming a diehard fan rather than like, I had to see this band for 12 times and you know what? I think I fucking love this band. They've done that equivalent, but like through streaming or whatever their thing is. You know, I've seen a million TikTok videos with their sound. So I think it's just like a tale of like two worlds where like our worlds are colliding. And this has been, I think, a huge topic of discussion is like us who were like, we've grinded it out, we've done this, we've earned this, which is true and valid. But then like not needing to shit on everything that's new just because they don't. You know, it's like I make the analogy, it's like the student loan forgiveness thing. It drives me nuts when people are like, well, I paid off all my loan, I did all this, and they don't have to. I'm like, isn't that a good thing? Like, shouldn't you want it to get easier? I would love for it to be easier for musicians, because if you give a shit enough about music that you're going to get in a van and live, even if you have your parents' credit card, it is still not easy. It is still hard, and it's something that your mind, body, and soul are not prepared for emotionally, mentally. You're having to grow up on the road where now, like, you don't really have, there's no bumpers like keeping you in a lane. Like, you're gonna fuck up, you're gonna do this. So I don't know. I try to force myself to have that perspective where I'm like, some of them, maybe the criticism is deserved, but there are a chunk who it's like, they just don't know any different. And that's not necessarily like their fault. And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't have wanted to grind the way we did. It's just not the world we live in anymore. It's just not the world now. And I hope it doesn't have to be, because I think if musicians can be set up for success earlier on as an independent band, those are going to be the bands that help shift the music industry to where bands who have been doing it for a long time are going to get better deals, because they're going to have to, because all these new bands are going to be like, why would I sign this horrible deal with your record label or sign a crazy management contract that's like, I'm due for all this stuff? They're like, I don't need you. And that helps us. And that's something that I feel like a lot of older musicians don't take into account.
I agree. And I I very much, like you, have been trying to be more open-minded to these younger bands coming in and making waves and stuff, because I think even on a larger scale, even like all the points you're making about deals and all that stuff, like all of that stuff is valid. And like these young bands are probably going to be the ones that are continuing to shift the industry, hopefully in a positive way for all of us. But I also look at things like our genre as a whole, rock and metal, doesn't really have a whole lot of like headline artists anymore. We don't have a ton of big names. A lot of them are aging out, retiring, and like
the next 5 to 10 years are going to be very interesting.
Yes. And like Slipknot can only headline a festival so many times, you know what I mean? And soon enough, they're going to be the only ones left. And, and this has been a debate that's been happening for the past year since Sleep Token got the download headline slot for this summer.
That's huge.
It's massive. And they deserve it. They deserve it. And all these old heads out there are like shitting on them. And it's like,
I think it's whack.
We have to open the door. We have to stop gatekeeping. And like, if there's a young band making waves, let's let them go.
Support.
Let them go.
You know what?
Yeah, support. Their rising tide is going to lift all of us up. Let them go.
It comes to the entire industry, though, not just the artist side. Because it's the same thing on the management and 100%. Agent side too,
100%.
right? Like at some point, you want to hate on all these new young managers that are coming in, and there are some that suck and shouldn't be managing, but there are some good ones. And the same thing with agents. There are some that just, like the concept but don't want to put the work in, but there are some good ones. And you have to understand that at some point, there has to be another generation. There has to be another wave of 5B and Fly South and all these giant management companies. Who was there before they were? Yeah. There was somebody doing it before they were doing it. They just did the right things, and they were the good ones who rose to the top. Well, guess what? Just like everything else, they get older, tired. God forbid, John Youngman is probably exhausted right now.
He travels more than anyone I know.
So like those guys, all those guys that people like me look up to. And it's not like we come in with the mentality of, oh, I want to put them out of business. It's like, no, I want to follow in their footsteps and do what I've gotten to watch them do over the years, because that's fucking cool.
Right. There's enough space for everyone to win, because now the pool size, rock and metal, just keeps growing. And one thing I will say, I think the only legacy band that truly has been like, you know what, let's help some bands as we slow down is Metallica. Totally. And they're the band that could be the most elitist possible and be like, no new friends. And they're one of the most like hey, what's going on? Oh, I like this. Like them putting Ice Nine on is so
incredible.
sick.
You wanna know what the coolest thing about that is they handpicked them too.
No, I know.
Their finger is like so on the pulse that
Yeah.
they said, nope, this band has got a cool thing going on. We like the sound, we like the image, their whole thing, and they were like, let's bring them, and that's fucking
And
cool.
Metallica could sell out a stadium with no support.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's what's great. And it, like they kind of did what like Taylor Swift just did in pop, where she took out like Paramore, which obviously Paramore are huge, but still like
Totally.
she could take out anyone she wants. She took out I think Gracie Abrams. That's like winning the lottery, you know?
Absolutely.
And so Metallica doing that, it's such a cool thing. And I do feel like if more of that era of band, manager, agent, festival buyer, whatever, was like, hey, if we don't start cultivating the next wave, these festivals that are 40, 50, 60, 80,000 are going to be like 20,000, 30,000, you know.
Slipknot does it too, though. I gotta get. I want to make sure that we give Slipknot credit too, because Slipknot does it too.
They do.
I mean,
I think Bring
I
Me
will
is
tell
going to
you,
do it. I think Bring Me is always going to be a band who takes really cool, and they don't care necessarily about like, is this band sonically the best for us or this? They're like, we think this is fucking cool, and we're going to take it out. I do think that there is just enough of it that we can get over the first hump. It's that when Tool, Avenged Sevenfold, like when that next era down, if they don't become that, if they don't start taking out the bands that like really can help grow the fan base, like you could look at it right now. If you go on like say like iTunes, like you see AC/DC, you see all, it's like all the same legacy things. When they're done, what is going to be left? And I will hopefully be able to say like, you know, bands keep rising. Like I think Sleep Token and Bad Omens are great examples. Like I personally saw like what Bad Omens was doing when they were playing to, you know, a couple hundred people in a club, and the way that they approached their band then is the same now. What they did behind the scenes and how they worked their band and how they planned and then just stuck to the plan, like it's so amazing to see, because it does give you that hope that like there is a right and a wrong way to go. And when you just like really believe in yourself and you want to put in and invest into your own band and into the vision you have, that's how you grow. That's how you become that band that stands out. And I hope that will be an example to labels, managers, agents, all these things. It's like we have to find the bands that are able to do the work, you know, behind the scenes, but then can take that and bring it to a live show that feels like more than just a band playing on stage. Like at the end of the day, to get to that level of headliner, you're an entertainer.
Absolutely.
The bands who don't invest into themselves and into their production and things like that, like those bands are not meant to be, you know, festival headliners. You need to, like, these people are saving up hundreds and thousands of dollars to go to these events. They should be entertained. Like at a certain point, like, and that's one thing that I don't like when I hear some of the old heads talk about, like, you know, the use of technology and certain things now. I'm like, Linkin Park was using the most for a long time. But you know what? Their fans were bleeding for them, screaming every single word, losing their voice, crying, smiling, laughing. Like some of their live shows, you look at the fan like cam videos, they're connecting so deeply with the band. And it's like, at one point, are you going to be like that old man on the other side of the fence being like, you can't do that anymore? Or are you going to be like, damn, this is fucking crazy that like technology can let a rock or metal band put on a show that otherwise you would have had to be a giant pop star to maybe have like the production. So I think that there's a new wave that's pushing, you know, Spirit Box is another one. I mean, you guys too, like Under Oath, like all the bands who are investing into their live show that are like, look, we could go home with maybe a lot more money, but we want to make sure our fans feel like they're getting a show and
An
not just a
experience
show every time. Exactly. Experiential. It's like those bands, I think, are going to push things forward. And whether it is, you know, one of these bands or these are the bands that inspire the one that breaks through, like I do think that rock and metal are in a good place, and with how mainstream some of the heavier songs are becoming, and you know, Octane's a great example of that. They're kind of a bridge for a lot of people.
I think Octane's become extremely important in the growth of
they're tastemakers.
the genre as a whole.
Yeah, they're tastemakers because it's showing these fans who maybe they were like more like they listen to Metallica, they listen to Tool, they listen to this. It's like now they're like open to breakdowns and stuff where they're like not like gimmicks in a negative way, but like they're open to like people dressing up or wearing makeup or whatever it is. Like whereas before they're like, if you didn't look like me, then that's not rock or metal for me. It's like now they're just like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but this is sick. And
You gotta be.
And I
Let's
love
be
that.
honest. Let's be honest. If you could line up 10 people that are completely far away from our world, don't know what rock metal is, and just play them a solid ass breakdown, how many of them would not move their head? I feel like it's
It'd be hard.
impossible.
Yeah.
It'd be tough, man. That shit is. I mean, it's cool. It sounds fucking cool, man. Like you think about like a ridiculous A Day to Remember breakdown. It's like fuck, dude. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man.
No, I
Like,
know. And it's
you can't turn away from that.
Yeah, and that's like for me, it's like going back to the childhood thing. Like I didn't grow up on metal at all. Like my dad was like Eagles, Boston, Steve Miller Band, country, like more in that wave. My mom was like from like Celine Dion to Hootie and the Blowfish and like classical music. So I had like those sides. And then I started to discover like alternative music, you know, like Alanis Morissette era, like that style music. And then I hit nu metal. And then nu metal was the bridge that got me into everything else. That's why like I need melody in my heavy music. It's just I came from so much melody that something that's just heavy and there's nothing there. And it doesn't mean like it can't be all screaming. It doesn't mean all these other things can't be at play, but if it's just, it feels like the wall of sound that I know people are like, that's just noise. To me, I'm like, that's just noise. Like I need something. I need a repeating part that's like, oh fuck, we're back here again. Okay, I love that. Like I need that and I know that. So, but I think a lot of fans are like that. And I think electronic music is another example of like electronic music used to be like this, like something that like was over here. And now the shows have become so experiential, like EDC, Lost Lands, all these things we're just like mesmerized by it. Coachella has adopted a lot of the EDC brand of production, which is translated into all these other genres. And I think electronic music was super ahead of its time in the experiential aspect of how the shows felt to fans. And but you listen to the drops and you're like, that's a breakdown. So now you have people who graduate from heavy music and they're loving electronic music, and people who love electronic music are falling in love with heavy music because they're like, oh, it's so similar. And I think when you break things down and people really start to listen, like there are a lot of similarities across all genres. And I think now more than ever, because of streaming and like the whole playlist thing, and you're shuffling, and maybe it's like you're going, from like Celine Dion to Snoop Dogg to Slipknot. It's like, I think people are constantly being exposed to a wider range of music and being like, you know what, I kind of fuck with it all.
Yeah.
And even with country now, like you got Hardy screaming on songs, and you got Lakeview who's playing actual breakdowns in country songs. It's crazy. It's awesome.
I have one more question about the early day stuff before we start to move more into like full life on the road and we're live and all that stuff. I'm curious about this one because I never got to experience this, but what was it like signing your Fearless deal? Like this is going to sound maybe crazy to you guys, but I've never signed a record deal until right before we put out our last record last year, because when I joined Texas, they were already signed to Equavision. When I joined the Ghost Inside, they were already on Epitaph. And it wasn't until we re-upped our Epitaph deal that I've signed a contract. So what was it like signing your first, or I guess it was
my first, yeah.
Okay, so what was that like for you? And what did your parents think about that?
And Fearless was like the hot shit back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when we got signed, like there was kind of like a little bidding war at the time. I think it was like Hopeless, Victory, Rise, and Fearless were like the ones that we were all talking to. We got sent the Victory contract, and our lawyer was like, we're literally ripping this up. Like, you're not signing this.
So good thing you didn't.
Yeah, thankful for Ben.
That's
McLean.
A good lawyer.
Yeah.
That's a very good lawyer.
Yeah, Ben McLean was our first real lawyer, and he guided us through that. A lot of the deals were like pretty similar. None of them were like great, but Shervan was the A&R at Fearless at the time. Shervan Esfahani.
I heard that name. Yeah, I remember him.
And he loved The Word Alive. And when I tried out and sent a demo, they wouldn't sign us until we had a song with me on like recording yet. Cause we're like, I joined the band, but there were no recordings yet. So they put us in the studio, like, we need a song like now. So we wrote a song, sent it to them, and he was like, okay, yeah, this is gonna be a thing. And so him and Bob came in hot, signed the band. They did give us the like technically the best deal of like the 5. And I don't know, it was just like we got it. We went into the offices and we did the whole like ceremonial like, you know, sign there. And I honestly, it was the first time where I ever had the feeling of like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life.
That's all. I was going to ask if there was any sort of like symbolic feeling to that too, or like,
it was,
I made the right choice or
like,
something
yeah,
like
it was
that.
like proof. It was like proof that like, this wasn't just this crazy like hobby. And it was like, oh no, like I'm in Huntington Beach right now at an amazing record label office. And I just signed a contract and I'm like, I'm making music now. Like, this is what I'm going to do. So that was like the first feeling of it. I didn't think that that would be sustainable. I didn't think I would like, I was like, oh, we signed this is cool. We'll put out like this EP. Maybe we'll put out a record. I wasn't even thinking beyond just the first EP. And then we got past the first EP and it was like, we're going to make the first record. I remember us going to Ocala and us being like, holy shit, like we're making a full length album. This is insane. And we did that with Andrew Wade. And we were all just like, this is as good as it gets. Like we did it. We're making a record. We made a record and we were like, that's it. You know, we'll probably put this out, play some shows for a little while, and that'll probably be it. Not because we didn't believe in it or didn't think it was good, but because we didn't even have the understand. It's like going where you've never gone before. You know, you're like, do I keep going? Do I go right? Do I go left? Like, we're just like, I don't know. And we just kept kind of like stumbling forward until I'd say it wasn't until, like 2013, 2014, when I was like, oh no, like this is for real. And I think if we lasted this long, like the first 5 years, essentially. And then after that, I was like, well, if we made it 5 years, maybe we could go to 10.
Right.
And then once you hit
Gump.
10, you're like, well, shit, like I made it 10. I'm definitely in a band and this is what I do. and then you hit, like we hit year 15 not that long ago. And I was like, oh, I'm for sure going to year 20. Like, you know, it just hit me. I'm like, I love this. I feel like I'm good at it. I know that I want to keep getting better at it. And as long as I like love playing shows and as long as I love making, you know, the Word Alive music, then I plan to do this. Because why would you give up your dream job because of anything other than like you feeling like it's time? And I've never actually felt that feeling. So for me, I like feel way better now because I know how much it took to get here. And I'm like, I did the hardest parts already. So now it's just like figuring out how to not repeat, you know, mistakes and to fix whatever you can from the past and just move forward.
I'm curious, do you, because I feel this, and being, I'm a few years behind you in doing this as a job. I joined Texas at the end of 2010. So I guess the end of this year, I'll be doing it for roughly 15 years.
Yeah.
Do you still love it the same way you did when you first started? Or do you feel like your relationship with music and being in a band and, you know, now that you've been in the industry and you've seen kind of like the behind the scenes and how ugly it can get sometimes, do you still love it the same way you did? And still like, do you still feel the fire the same way that you did in the beginning, or is it slightly different for you now?
So I for sure love it way more. And the reason being is it was so chaotic. I don't know that I even loved it back then. It's just all I knew.
Yeah.
And it's all I felt like I was supposed to do. And we were touring 9 to 10, almost 11 months out of the year. I didn't even have enough time to like stop and look around and like take in like what my life could have been, maybe should be different. It was just go, 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 go. It wasn't until like the pandemic happened and, you know, everything stopped and it was like a forced stop. And I was actually like really grateful for that in a lot of ways because it gave me the perspective of like, oh no, like I do love this and I do want to keep doing this, not just because it's all I know. Because after then, it definitely wasn't just because of what you knew. It was like you had to want to do it because it was so much harder getting back touring than even when we first started. So for me, I love it more because I have the perspective of the gratefulness, the appreciation of it, and it doesn't feel as chaotic. You know, I could talk for so long of all the ways that I feel like I failed myself or our band, or like didn't live up to the version of myself that I would love to. But I also like, I was a kid that didn't get taught a lot of things I wish I was. And it's, again, no fault to my parents. They didn't have the tools, but I kind of just went out into the world without the tools that would have set me up to do it better. And then trying to handle being the singer and the face of the band, but also coming from like playing guitar, playing bass. I never wanted to be like the front man that was like, oh, look at me, it's just me, which some singers in our scene like did that and it worked for them and they became these like big namesake things. But that just like wasn't my personality. But I also think I was like such a people pleaser a lot of my life until therapy. I mean, I still am to a certain degree. Like,
Do you feel like part of loving it more is like feeling more comfortable in your skin as being Telle from the Word Alive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like I was very vocal and loud and overshared on the internet for a very, very, very long time. And you can't erase that, you know? So it's like I ingrained my identity or that version of myself into people's minds that like a lot of them tuned me or the Word Alive out years ago. And I don't blame those people, because if I was reading someone's tweets that I was tweeting in like 2009 to whatever, I would have been like unfollow or mute or whatever. Like,
Me too.
I don't need to know this about this guy.
When I see stuff pop up on my memories that is shit that I posted from like 2008, I'm like, ugh.
Let me tell you, Facebook
memories are brutal.
Facebook memories pop up every day, and I delete shit all the time.
I didn't even think about deleting it. They're embarrassing.
Oh, I delete it.
I'm like, man, I can't believe I said this.
I delete it all the time.
Not even because like to hide that I said it. It's more, I don't need that reminder every year.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that.
I'm like, look, that version was a version of me, but I am not that version now. I don't recognize that person, and I can laugh about it. I can think it's funny. You know, I wouldn't even mind sharing some of them from time to time because I'm like, damn, this is wild. But that was kind of like, especially in our scene, I feel like that was like part of some of the culture was like, you gotta share these things about yourself. And what I didn't really understand was like how like reckless and dangerous like that was emotionally and mentally. Because when you're so like, you're taught that you have to be sharing all these things about you, but you're also like, oh, share this, but not this. We don't talk about this. So like, you're just projecting technically a false version of yourself. It's hard when you're like, you know, looking back and I'm like, man, I would have done so many things differently. At the same time, I'm like, well, I'm still here and I still have the opportunity to like utilize what I did wrong as a way of not only doing better for myself, but then guiding other bands, other musicians, other people, and being like, look, this is not going to be good for you. And I can stand on that from experience. So I'm like, it's just a means to an end for me.
Everyone knows that you're tied to your fans, right? You're open, you're always at merch, you're communicative with your fans. Do you have any like stories from fans that actually really moved you? Like moments that they come to you and they just, like, any one in particular that comes to mind that really moved you?
I mean, I've had so many over the years, and you know, we've written songs like when Mitch passed from Suicide Silence, I wrote the song Never Forget about him. And then when Kyle from We Came as Romans passed, I wrote KF for him. And writing those songs in particular, Life Cycles is also a song that people really have gravitated towards. I get a lot of stories of people losing loved ones, people losing their kids, like small children. A lot of military who've like come and been like, I was in Iraq and I saw my best friend get blown up next to me. And you're just like,
yeah.
Or someone's like, I walked in, I found my brother killed himself. Like very heavy and horrific traumas for someone to endure. And the music that we've made and some of the lyrics have enabled them to feel like that feeling of like, I just got to wake up. I just got to take one more step, one more day. And so I've had a lot of those where it's so heavy, and those are the stories that make me feel like if my social battery is like drained, if I'm missing home, if whatever's going on in my life, no matter how bad it is, there's not been a single tour we have done since probably 2011 where I have not had at least one person be like, I didn't know how to handle my grief. I didn't know how to handle my depression. I didn't know how to handle my anxiety. I didn't know how to handle, whatever was going on in their life. And it was like, maybe they were even like having suicidal ideation and like being like, I need to be here. And the amount of times I've had someone be like, I just had like music on and whatever song like popped up on their shuffle. And they're like, it's the only reason I didn't kill myself. And I'm like, it's still to this day, even talking about it right now, like it's so heavy because it's like, it's a double-edged sword because I'm so grateful for it, but it does leave you with that feeling of like, if I stop, like, does that mean someone is not going to have that? And so there's this weird like weight that it is.
That was literally going to be my next question. Do you carry weight from that? But something to alleviate yourself a little bit from that weight that you have to understand is if you stopped, right? Say Telle hung it up right now and retired. He was done. Those songs
are still there.
They're forever.
Yeah.
They're forever. You cannot undo that.
Yeah.
Those are there and they're going to be there even long after you're gone.
Exactly what I was about to say. Your songs, your message is going to live on longer than all of us.
Well, so the thing for me that helped me to not carry that weight so permanently, and it's what I tell almost every single person, say it is someone who's like thinking about like not being here anymore. I always tell them, I'm like, you chose to stay. My song didn't like take over your body
right
make you like. Music is the soundtrack that can invoke emotions or memories, and it can help you feel connected for sure. But I don't want to put, my songs on this pedestal that it's like my songs are saving your life. You're saving your life. We just happen to be the song that played at the right time
that inspires you
maybe
to save your life.
Maybe one of the other 1,000 songs, you have would have also done the same thing. And so it's helped me over the years to not take it and carry that and like, cause it can really fuck with your head.
Sure.
And thankfully also like I studied psychology in school and I go to therapy now. So I can handle a lot of those things a little bit better. But I really try to encourage people to be like, I appreciate you saying I saved your life or the music did. You saved your life. And I really try to instill that in someone. I'm like, that you did not want to leave. And, I'm happy that you connected in this way that kept you here, but you have to like give yourself credit and be proud of the strength that you gave yourself in that moment that it would have been easy to not. And, that's just such a hard thing because you have these fans who also, like we were talking about, don't have the tools necessarily, or they don't have the infrastructure with their family, friends. And it's just hard because you're like, now that I'm older, I'm like, I can kind of be maybe this, like in their eyes, sometimes like a father figure, which has happened, and parasocial relationships have developed over time. Twitch did not help in that
Twitch
regard.
definitely, I've made some very real friendships from that, right? But it definitely causes people to feel like that relationship is maybe more intense or more, I don't know, deeper than it is in real life. Like that's a very big issue for sure.
They latch on in a way that becomes unhealthy. And when you're like empathetic and when you're trying to be like put yourself out there, and this has been something I have definitely done like my whole life. It's like I also was just not prepared for what that responsibility would entail, and that's I think one of the hardest things that I deal with now, and I think a lot of musicians do, who either A, were like me where they connected a lot, or people were streaming on Twitch, and you have these people coming up and it's like you are this symbol in their life or something that they like maybe their parents weren't able to give them and that they needed and that they deserve for sure. But like I can't carry that responsibility with me day to day because then I would be a shell of a human. And you do have to try to find that balance. Like I never want to be the singer that's just like closed off and I never talk to fans. I don't accept like letters, or I don't talk about real shit. Like, I don't want to be that, because I feel like I'm just a human who happens to do music. But there is a level of like, I need to set boundaries,
Totally.
and that is okay. And setting boundaries, I think, is another thing that was not taught to our generation. We are still figuring that out ourselves. And I think we know that we should. And it's even like, for me, like my girlfriend who's younger than I am, she's so much better at it. And I think that's just one of the cool things about life, is like, when you're our age, I think the key, whether it's on the music side, the industry side, the key to like not becoming jaded and bitter is to recognize like, we're in the era where our generation does not have to pass down what was passed down to us. I think we're like that
Absolutely.
first generation where we, because of the internet, because social media, because of just awareness being raised as a whole, we probably fucked up a lot in our lives.
Oh yeah.
You know, did bad shit, hurt people that we shouldn't have, whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
But we are hitting a point where we're like, fuck, like, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. And I think we're the first generation that is trying to steer the ship in a different direction. And then the generations before us, or like coming after us, the younger ones, are really holding that shit accountable, because they're like, that doesn't work for me. That's fucked up. I don't like that you said that, or I don't like how you move right now. And that's cool. I think having that is important. But I think it's
Absolutely.
beautiful, because our generation is forcing our parents and that generation to then also have to be like, okay, I got to have some conversations with myself. And I think progress is like such a like pendulum. You know, it's like everything goes too far this way, and then people are like, oh, well, that's too far, and we go this way. And you hope that it ends somewhere centrist, where it's like we can all be like, okay, this feels right. And I feel like we're in that just time in the industry where we're trying to figure out, you know, labels like more TikToks, more TikToks, more TikToks. And we came where it's like, I just want to play music, man. You know,
Yeah.
But then also like, here's these tools, and you're seeing people who are being able to skip steps, but it's not skipping. It's just, we paved the way, and then social media and all
You're taking a different
tools
path.
have
Different
enabled it
path.
to be like, you don't have to go through the shit that I went through. And I hope that that means that the generation after you has even less shit. And maybe that
Right.
makes it better, and maybe music can be consumed in a more artistic way again. And I think like that we're just in that pendulum swing right now, where everyone's trying to figure out like the balance of like artistry. We financially, like, this is a business, this is a career. You have to operate a certain way, which we also weren't taught. You know, our early
Not at all,
managers and things like, we're not setting us up for this era, because most bands never made it long enough for it to matter.
Right.
And I understand that now. Like, looking back, I'm like, it wasn't because they didn't give a shit. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they were like, well, most bands like fade out after a record, maybe two. And then it's like, oh shit. Just like I was having the oh shit, like, I think this is real. It's like, oh shit, like this band is gonna keep going, and fuck, well, now I have to go backwards. And that's, I think, the thing that's happening in the industry right now.
I'm curious, as like you said, you're someone who's you go to therapy. You seem to be very you're introspective about how you handle your emotions, at least these days. Like you've definitely been pinpointing work into that.
Yeah.
And touring can have like the craziest swing of spectrums of highs and lows. Like you could go from the best day of your life to the absolute lowest, worst moment ever within, you know, sometimes a matter of minutes, minutes, even.
Minutes.
If you tour in a band, whether you're crew or band, it does not matter. You will have that happen.
Yeah,
Actually, you will have higher highs and lower lows for sure.
I'm curious how you handle those swings, because they can be fucking soul crushing. I mean, I've gone from having the best day of my life on tour to wanting to never go on tour again, all in the same day before, you know, like, and I'm guilty of not handling it in a healthy manner. I'm just curious. I'm curious how you go about that.
I'd be lying if I said I always handle it healthy. I would say I normally handle it unhealthy, but I am a very internal unhealthy person. So like, I will be the guy, like, say for instance, we were flying to Brussels one time to start a European tour. We were about to land, and the airport went on strike. This is just an easy example to show how I like handle like something that sucks. We land, the airport is on strike, everyone leaves, but a couple people who were helping in baggage, like literally everyone's gone. There are thousands and thousands of people, bags everywhere. Nothing's working. No one knows any information. We're like, Thankfully, we always fly to Europe at least like 2 days before the first show. This was the first time we did that. And we're like, oh, well, we have to do this always. So they're like, there's no one to get your bags, and you also can't go find them. And we're like, well, the bus is coming, and you guys know from European tours, like you get picked up and you could be in another country in like 6 hours. We had a finite period of time where we could get our shit. Our band was all like, this is it. Like, we quit. Everyone was like super, super outwardly upset and like done. And I thought the band was going to break up. And I was just like, guys, it's all going to work out. Where, I was just like, everything's fine. Internally, I'm like, if I don't pretend that I'm good right now, everything's going to go to shit. And I have had that feeling the majority of our career where I am aware, and I'm maybe feeling some of the same emotions that my band is, but I have been the one who has to like bury that down. And that doesn't mean that their reactions were like wrong by any means. Like, I was feeling the same way too. But in my mind, I'm like, if I react this way, maybe the band does break up. And I don't want that. So I need to choose this thing. But when you do that for years and years and years, and you do that in every situation you possibly can with tour stuff when things go wrong, I just took it upon myself almost as like a badge of honor of like, no matter how bad it gets, I'm going to try to be positive. But then I never really dealt with the fact that I actually was not stoked, or I was unhappy, and then I'm gonna get off tour and I would like drink heavily or do whatever. And I wasn't actually like even handling the emotions. I was just bearing. And then my way of like releasing that was not even releasing it. It was just further bearing it and then telling myself that I got over it. And that's how I handled
just keep
a
carrying
lot. Yeah, and that's how I handled a lot. And then it would start to explode in other ways where then my emotions would inevitably pour out. And it might be a situation that has nothing to do with why I'm actually upset, but my body and my soul is just like, this is on you. You fucked up. We can't hold this in anymore. Here it goes. And then I would be like, where did that come from? And that was before I was in therapy. And even after I started therapy, which is off and on since like 2018, it still would happen because it's such a hard thing to unlearn. And when you combine like people pleasing, it's like, I would hurt myself if it meant you didn't even know anything was wrong. And I've done that in every level of my life, probably since I was a kid. So I don't always handle it healthy. Now, how I try to handle it is I try to acknowledge this is what's going on. This is how I feel. It's okay to feel this way. Like, do I need to cry? Like, is this like I need to let this out? Do I need to talk to someone? Do I need to vent? Do I need to go to the gym and just kind of like let out, aggression in a healthy way? Do I need to create music? Like, which is a thing that like I realize like I have to create music. If I don't create music, and like I'd say it gets around like week 3 to 4, and I didn't even realize this. My girlfriend did. I start to change. Like I start to exhibit behavior, and I'm a very patient, like calm person almost always. If I get to a certain point, you would think I'm like what do they call it? Like hangry. I'm just like upset about the little dumb things that don't matter at all. And my girlfriend was the one who like finally realized, because then I would have like a writing day or something, and then I'd be like a joy to be around for a while. And she's like, I think you need to connect with yourself, that like this is something that makes you feel good and gives you whatever sense of purpose that helps drain that negative stuff, which was great.
What would you call that? It's not hangry. So what's it going to be?
I don't know. I think I have a mental illness of some kind.
Dude, I'm right there with you. Me and my wife have this same discussion. If I'm home from tour long enough and I don't have any sort of creative outlet in that time I become, even I can feel it in myself, and I try not to project it outwardly, but she can start to feel it on me too. Like, and that's part of the reason that I've gotten into like video creation stuff, because it's a creative way that I can get that part of me out that's not band or music related. It gives me an outlet when I'm home and doing stuff on my own. And but I have to do it, or else it's like this thing inside of me that's like welling up, and it like, no matter how hard I try not to let it affect anything, it's like it just wants to explode out of me. And it's not always a pretty thing.
I mean, I've been diagnosed. I have panic disorder. I have like a high functioning, like high level anxiety. And then I have a variation of OCD. So that's definitely, all those things are part of it. And then, I've had depression off and on since I was a teenager, which like a lot of us, I think it's because we were taught, like, especially guys, like, don't cry, don't have emotions.
Hold it in, don't
It was
feel
like,
anything.
yeah, it was like so much of my life was like, don't be this way that you are, without knowing that was what was happening. And then I hit a point where like I like felt like I couldn't stop crying for a while.
It caught up to you.
It's something that like I feel, and if anyone's watching this and you feel like that might be a thing, like it was so freeing for me once, and it took a while, and it was annoying because I would start to be like, okay, this is enough, But that's that voice is also the reason you're in that position in the first place. So I am much more in control of my emotions today than I was a year ago, than I was a year before that. And I just understand that it's not going to be like all at the same time. But I think recognizing what you need for you to feel and be okay and actually be okay and be productive, like those are things that we try to run from for whatever reason. And the sooner you like can figure out what it is we all individually need, especially in this industry where it's so brutal and you don't know who you can trust, or you're hoping things are going right and you never know. And then at the end of the day, it's all indicative on a large enough group of people fucking with what you do to even make it a possibility to continue. So you kind of feel like your worth is based on other people's ideas of your creativeness, and which is really hard. I think
it's tough
to do, because that isn't actually true. Like your worth is not based off of what you do. And so I think that's been like a thing that I'm like still, now in my later 30s, I'm like trying to understand and to accept and to put into practice, because knowing it and putting it into practice are very different things. And I think unlearning is 10 times harder than learning something.
Definitely.
So that's like where I'm at in my life. Is like, I'm like, fuck, I have to unlearn so much shit while also learning at the same time. And so
was it hard for you when you first decided that you needed to go to therapy? Because when I first went, it was like, I don't need therapy. Like, I'm fucking fine. You know what I mean? Like, and it was, my wife told me we did couples therapy, and it was like
which is amazing.
I don't need no fucking therapy. I'm good. What the fuck you mean I need therapy? I'm fuck therapy. I'm cool. And then I did it, and I was like, shit, I probably did need this, because it was neat the way that, especially couples therapy for us was neat, because it was the way like we were able to communicate with one another with a third party in the room that is no bias opinion on either side. So when she would say something that I would get defensive on, he would be like, well, wait a minute. What she's trying to say is, and explain it to me in a way that resonated with me and allowed me to process it without being defensive, so I could actually understand it.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. But at first, when I went to therapy, I was like, fuck this. Like, my ego was in the way. Like, I don't need this shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm fucking Billy Badass over here. I don't need no goddamn,
Well, I don't
need no fucking therapy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, our generation and above ours for sure, the idea of going to therapy meant you were crazy.
Totally. Cause, that
was the projection and assumption. And that's what I 100%. Thought. It was like,
me too.
Well, I got to be crazy. Well, it's like, motherfucker, you are a little bit crazy,
That too. And, I mean, to be in this business this long, we must be that crazy.
Absolutely.
But I had my mom would force me to go to therapy when I was a kid, because I was rebellious and I was fucking troublemaking, causing all these issues, and they didn't know what the fuck was going on. Like, why is he running the streets at 13 and doing shit he's not supposed to be doing? You know what I'm saying? So they're like, fuck it, let's throw him in therapy. And then to me, it was like, so I just remember being forced to go to those places and not want to go, because like you said, well, if you go to therapy, you're crazy. I'm not fucking crazy. I just don't like y'all.
Well, the thing about
that's how I felt
about like therapy, and you touched on, with your wife and the way people communicate, and also like men and women, just our brains are wired differently. And I also did couples therapy with my girlfriend, and it was amazing, because he would be like, you two are trying to say something that you both would love to hear, but because it's not being communicated in the way that you hear it and receive it, you're just feeding through ego and being defensive. And I don't know if you guys tried mirroring, but mirroring is so brutal at times, but very, very good. And you can put it into practice in any relationship you have. Like, say I'm feeling frustrated or defensive, and I'm feeling like I'm not heard. Like we're talking about something and I'm like, how could you even be mad? Like, I don't understand how you're not hearing what I'm saying. So there's a tool called mirroring, which says the other person does not speak, like cannot speak. You say what you're trying to say, and then the other person has to say back what they heard. And when they say back and you're like, no, that's not what I said, this, and you do that back and forth with each other, sometimes it's really quick, sometimes it takes a while, depending on what the subject is. You factually get to a point where you're saying and hearing the same thing. And then from that point, you can actually have a conversation. It's not that you're not saying something right. It's just you got to acknowledge that we're all like, our brains are defense mechanisms. We're trying to save us. We're trying to help us. But a lot of that is built off like childhood stuff. Like, you being like therapy. No, I think of therapy as like, I don't want to do this. That's because when you were a kid, you told your brain this is bad and I don't want to do this. But that's not real. So then when you are an adult, and like I've also done regression therapy, which is you go back and you kind of look at situations that you were in when you were younger. And I always use this example. It's really easy. Say you're a kid and your dad comes home from work and you're like, oh, Dad, I want to show you my toy. And my dad's like, not right now. And like goes away. And your kid mind is like, did I do something wrong? My dad doesn't love me. So you just fill in the blanks because your brain is trying to protect you from whatever just happened. Your dad maybe just like lost his job or like lost a deal or got in a car, something, or stressing about bills that has nothing to do with you. And as an adult, you can look back and be like, you forgive like that version of your dad and be like, oh, bro, life is fucking hard. And I get it. And you just snapped, and that has nothing to do with me. And so what that does, it actually starts to rewire the defense mechanisms in your brain. And when you go and you work on those things where you go back, anytime you find yourself like repeating patterns of like, why when this comes up, I always jump to like, I'm defensive, or why do I always feel like I take this personal? Well, when you can go back and start to try to understand why you feel that way, oftentimes you can undo that. And then you can actually hear what's being said. And it's not because you don't want to hear it. It's because you've literally built up this pile of like defense mechanism that then is fed through ego, where you want to be heard, you don't want to be wrong, you don't want to fight, whatever it is. And then, it just becomes this like easier thing when you're older and you're like, oh, like I don't need to take this defensively, because we're all operating from that place where if you feel frustrated, usually it's because you feel like you're not heard. And being heard and seen is the most important thing to most people. And when you can do that, then you can have a healthy conversation, even when you're not agreeing, because then at least you're not feeding it through like your ego and defense mechanisms.
We've been going for a while now, and I don't want to keep you for too much longer. I have two more questions that I would really love some of your insight on.
Gummy bears, grapes asleep below me.
Let's go.
Oh, show him grape. Oh, he's asleep now. We got to get.
Yeah, don't disturb. Is that your dog?
Well, he woke up.
He's the fucking best looking dog you've ever seen.
Let me see.
Life.
I love a puppy appearance.
This dog is unbelievable.
A good puppy cameo.
Look at this thing.
My sweet Jesus.
Oh my God! Look at that guy.
A good boy.
He's so fucking cute.
He is the coolest dog
I've
ever seen.
What a legend.
Well, get some grape ASMR.
We're here for it.
Come on, grape. All right.
Yeah,
all right.
He's like stoned right now.
He is fucking.
You just woke him from a wonderful slumber.
He was in a deep nap.
He was.
All right, go back to sleep, buddy.
Underneath here.
So a little bit ago, you mentioned that you guys were just in a writing session either yesterday or recently or whatever. But I'm curious, so this far into your career with as much music as you guys have written and released, what's keeping you inspired? Do you still turn to the same type of things that you did when you first started doing this for inspiration, or have you found like new outlets that are inspiring you to write and create?
I think like especially in this genre, like when we first started, it was just like, can we make a cooler riff? Can we make a cooler breakdown? Can we make a higher sung chorus? Can we do?
Oh yeah.
It was like more like part based, and it was like that was what fed a lot of the song, was like part centric, ideology. And then now, it's more like song and dynamic range, and just like is the music telling the same story emotionally as the lyrics and as the melodies. So I like like every facet and stage of making music and in the songwriting process. But I definitely now it's like I just want to write something that I can listen back to and be like, okay, I think this is sick. And sometimes it ends up being like more for me and or the band than it does our fans. And that's okay to me because I'm like, we have 100 something songs, and I'm like, if half of them end up our fans love them and half they don't, that's okay to me because I'm like, this is something I get to like express and put out there. And I view it like the same as like painting or something. It's like every painting you make is not going to be like the Mona Lisa, you know? It's like,
Right.
and it doesn't have to be. And I think understanding that and knowing that like every song, I think today it's hard because with the TikTok stuff, with all these things, it's like, gotta write a banger, gotta write this, has to have the craziest this. And I'm like, that's not realistic, like,
No.
to have. So I think like for me, I went through this phase where I was like overthinking everything I was doing. And now the last few weeks, I've been like settling back into just like connecting with myself. And, you know, I actually listen to like certain Word Alive songs that I love. And I'm like, what do I love about this song? And I was like, oh, like I wasn't like trying to do or be anything. It was just, I
Well,
was
yeah,
just
at some point
myself.
at some point you start to forget that like just being me and doing what I liked is what got me here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. Exactly.
I was thinking about how, you know, we're coming up on time to start writing again. You know, our record came out almost a year ago, and we're definitely starting to have the conversations of like, you know, time for the next record. That would be record 7 for the band. It's just like, I don't know. I definitely different things inspire me now than when it was very much like in the early days of Texas. It was like, how do we write a song that would be nearly impossible for someone to cover? Like those were the things we were doing. And like, that is just not where that's not where my mindset's at anymore. So I didn't know if that has shifted for you over time.
Yeah, I think it's same. And I think it's similar for a lot of our peers is like we went from being like, I just want to make this hard. I want to do this to be like, man, I just want to have fun and I want to make this something that I can vibe with live. I try to look at songs more of like, if we're playing them live, how am I going to feel with this? And
Those are the things that are important. You have to go out on stage and sing that song every night for a month at a time, or, you know, like
Absolutely.
you have to be thinking about that, or else you're not going to be your authentic self when you walk out on stage. And there's nothing worse than phoning it in, you know?
It's
Like,
interesting hearing that come from an artist's perspective because I always tell my bands that like it doesn't matter what like yes we can say if a song's good or not or we can say this or we can say that, but like you have to be on that stage, you have to face those fans,
Yeah.
you have to play those songs over and over again, not me.
I'm going to
mean,
tell
that
my
was-
manager you said that.
You should.
It was a very, very real conversation that we had as a band when we were making our last record, because it's, you know, quite a bit different than some stuff we put out in the past. And it was like, I'm sure we're going to have people who say bad things about it, but at the end of the day, like the 5 of us fucking love it. And it's what
It's
we want to
crazy.
play. And if we're going to be stoked playing it on stage together, then that's like, at this point in our career, that's the only thing that matters to us.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much people's opinion can really enable a band's decisions.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Did I say that right?
I mean,
I don't think I said
enable
that
is probably not the word you're looking
No, I
for,
don't think
but
that's the
I
right
mean,
word.
maybe sway a band's
right.
decisions.
Yeah, that's probably better. I definitely fucked that all up.
I
but
knew-
yeah,
I mean-
I know what you're getting at,
Yeah.
though.
you know, like it's crazy that like, you know, if you write a song that feels really good, but it's not the quote unquote typical Ghost Inside or typical Word Alive song, your thoughts are, fuck, what are the fans going to think about this? What are the fans? And it's just so crazy. And then it goes to the same thing with tours. Right? Like, especially nowadays in this cancel culture, like you can only accept certain tours or not accept certain tours because of the fans online might just destroy you. It's just crazy.
Yeah, we're living in a interesting time. It's because people don't really give second chances anymore. You know,
Yeah.
like you're living with the fear of like, if I put out a record that people perceive to be bad, whether it is actually bad or not, and if it's their perception of bad, are they going to give us another chance on the next record?
Well, that's what's
you know,
weird is, like-
will there be a chance for redemption? You don't really know anymore.
That's what's weird for me because like I don't love every Linkin Park song. I don't love every Deftones song. I don't love every Killswitch song or whatever band you want to throw out there. And some bands that I love have made one or multiple records I just really don't like.
Sure,
I
same.
don't care because I'm like, you made stuff that I do love. And to me, I've never looked at a record and been like, that's it. I'm not a fan anymore.
Same.
I've never felt that way, and fans do feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't relate to that. And to me, I'm like, I don't think making a record. We're artists. We're supposed to try things, and the difference is like we get paid to make art, but we are also confined to the contract. It's like we have to create it maybe in a certain time, and maybe that's not when you're at your peak creatively, or maybe the band's not firing on all cylinders internally or whatever it is. And it's like you can't do anything about that. And that's just a moment in time. But to me, that should be okay because that is a part of the whole process. It's like
Yep.
I've had to write like say 5 bad songs to write the one that I'm like, okay, oh, I love this song.
Right,
And if
right.
I didn't do those 5 songs, I wouldn't have ever have made that one. So I do think like people are too harsh in that way. Like that's one thing I'll never agree with, like, and I don't view as like a positive or progressive mindset for music and consumption is being like, I don't like this, therefore I don't like the band anymore. I'm like, I feel like if the Ghost Inside wanted to make, I don't know, a lo-fi record for whatever reason, I'd be like, I kind of fuck with that they did that. And be like, there'll probably be some people who'd be like, I actually love that and
Right.
have that. If it was up to me, The Word Alive would be able to put out like so many EPs and it would be like, I just want to try this genre or I just want to try this sound without it being consumed of like, this is who The Word Alive is now.
Sure.
Right.
Rather than just like,
It's an
we're
experiment, not an identity.
yeah, we're I don't know if you guys like the band Thrice, but
Yeah, of course.
they do like the Alchemy Index, and they had that like they had the coolest concept, which was like using the same lyrics but making different songs that said the same thing and different genres. And one was like fire, so it's like heavier, and then one was like very chill. And to me, I'm like, I wish every band who wanted to do that could do it, and
that.
it would be celebrated because I'm like, I think that's cool that. Like, I know The Word Alive can play a bunch of different genres. And I think that's awesome about our band. But some people are like, no, I want it to be this one thing. And if you
Right.
break out of that, then fuck The Word Alive. And when I was younger, that bummed me out. And now I'm older, I'm like, bro, like, if you like 5 songs, that's 5 songs. That's sick. Like, there
Right.
are
Put them bitches
billions
on
of
repeat.
songs. Like, and you fuck with those. Why would I be worried about the ones you don't? Because
Right.
maybe for every song you hate, there's 100 people who love that song and it's their favorite song.
Yep.
And I try to like look at our band like that and like celebrating the fact that we've made, a wide variety. I think Brent from Shinedown just made a quote recently and he was just like, we've always played in a pretty like large sandbox. And because someone asked me in an interview, like, do you consider you guys a pop band, a rock band, an alt band, a metal? What do you consider yourselves? And he was just like, we consider ourselves Shinedown. And to me, that is how I feel. And that's how I would love to be, appreciated, I guess, for that.
Yeah.
It's like, I love the idea that all these different bands that I like have tried different things. If it
It's
doesn't work,
interesting.
if it doesn't work, you don't like it, you hate it, maybe you look back and you're like, oh man, I wish we didn't make that song. That's okay too. Like, I feel like making bad songs should be more acceptable than it is.
It's just part of the process,
Yeah.
man.
It's artistry. Like, that's what I'm thinking. I was just thinking about it. I never thought of it from this perspective ever in my life until right now when you were talking. But I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, man, asking a artist or a band member or a musician, I should use, to write the same style music over and over and over again. Like, if you asked an artist to paint a flower 50 times in a row, that shit's going to get boring after probably the 10th one.
Right.
He's going to be like, fuck, I don't got to paint 40 more flowers.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the fuck, this
Yeah,
sucks.
I mean-
let's try something different.
We've been pretty open about this as far as working on our last record, but like we went and did the round of like co-writing sessions and stuff with like all the usual suspects. And one of them was with John Lundeen from Point North, who is a fucking genius.
I love John.
I
And
thought his name was John London all this time. It's Lundeen.
I think it is anyway. I could have said his name wrong. I miss these writing sessions, so I don't even fucking know. But I know that the guys went in on one specific day with him where they were like, let's go in and write the song Chrono as if it was written in 2023 at the time, which is, one of the bigger songs off of Returners, which is like, all of the quote unquote cool kids who like the Ghost Inside, that's their favorite record, right? It ended up feeling like so tired and boring, and not a single person in the room was excited, and it felt forced. And it's like, I think from that moment on, we just went, what what are we doing? Like, we can only be who we are today. Like, Returners is a great record. That record came out when I wasn't involved with the band. I got to consume it like everybody else in the world. I was a massive fan of that record, and that record still means a lot to me. A very important record for the genre. But that record was made by those people at that time. And first off, some of those people aren't even in the band anymore. And the people who are still in the band are different people than they were fucking, 14, 15 years ago. They're just not the same people.
Absolutely.
We can't be those people in that moment. And so, like, what are we doing trying to force it? We can only be the people we are right now, and we can only make the music that excites us now. And so I think from that moment, we were just like, we can't try to be who we're not. We have to write the music that makes sense to us right now. And like, the records that people love still exist. We're not taking them off the internet. They can listen to them whenever we want. We still play the old songs live also. Like,
That's where we're at. I think
we just got to do us.
We have so many like variation, and it just depends. Like, when you're not headlining, you get anywhere from like 6, 7 to like maybe 9 or 10 songs, and then people are like, why didn't you play it? I'm like, but we could play for hours and hours and not play all of our songs. So I'm like, it's very hard, and we also don't pick which songs do better, or like which ones like go over better live, or like maybe we're on a tour, say we're touring with you guys and we lean a little bit more to the heavy side, or we're touring with let's say if we were touring with like Sleeping with Sirens, like we wouldn't play that same set. I love that we can switch it up. To me, I think that's sick, but I know what you mean, because you can't placate yourself or your fans, and I think like you guys want to be as like genuine in the music you're putting out, because that is what you guys are known for, regardless of like the sonic value of it. I feel like you guys are a heartfelt, like genuine band that like people have resonated with for being that. And I think the fans that want you to stylistically fall within a certain line, like I really hope that becomes an outdated mindset to have. And,
Same.
I hope so too.
Same.
And I think, again, going back to like these new generation fans and bands, I think some of them genre bend a lot, and some of them are probably influenced by bands like ours and other ones that, all of our friends. But then also like they like maybe like Adele, or, who knows, Sabrina Carpenter, and maybe they infuse that somehow. It's like, I think the idea that you should want bands to create what you think you want, I want to be surprised. I remember hearing, what's a good example? Oh my God. What's the band? Cosmopolitan Blood Loss. Anyone watching this will be very disappointed in me. Anyways, I hated the record. I hated it when it came out. Daryl Palumbo is the singer.
Oh, is it Glassjaw?
Glassjaw.
Yeah.
Glassjaw. I fucking love Glassjaw. Love Glassjaw. When I first heard Glassjaw, I was like, this might be the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. But there was something about it, and I'm like, all right, let me listen again. And it took like 3 or 4 listens, and by like the 3rd or 4th, I was like, okay, I think this actually fucks.
Yeah, I think I get this now.
I don't think people are giving music that chance nowadays. It's like, get me within the first 20, 30 seconds, or I'm out. And
we talked about this on another with another person. I can't remember who it was.
I think it was Balls.
But we were talking about like that back in the day, we would get a CD and we would have it until we could afford to get another one. So it was like all you were forced to listen to. Now it's swipe, or click, and you're on to something to the next. So you don't. My question was: is music being absorbed the way that it was back then, and is it having the impact that it had on our generation because of that?
That's one thing that I feel like we will sound old, in that regard. But I will die on that hill. I won't. A lot of the other hills, I'm not trying to die on. That one I will. I'm like, I think there's something to be said for something not like gripping you instantly. And it takes a little bit to like develop that palate, so to speak. It's like, if in food, it's like you grow up and you're like, I love, and maybe you guys do, it's wrong. If you're like, I love my steak well done. And you're like, that's that
no.
is the wrong way to eat a steak.
Yeah,
Like
that makes you a psychopath and potentially a
My
serial
mom.
killer.
But like it's the same with music.
My mom eats her steak well done.
But it's the same with music. Like you're
Totally.
you're like, to me, I'm like, I'm glad you like the music you like, but you're not gonna tell me that it is better than me, who like I'll give something like a full, like I will give it every shot to like it. I always, when something comes out and I like it, if say I've heard a couple singles or whatnot, I will make time. I will sit down. I will listen to the record from front to back as it was intended. And I'll probably do that at least 2 or 3 times with something. And then from there, then I'll pull the songs and I'll be like, okay, these 3 or 4 or whatever it is, even if it's one, I'll be like, this one song, okay, I'm going to listen to this probably pretty regularly. And then I do that. But if the record were to come on, I'm also not going to like turn it off necessarily. I'm going to be like, you know what? I like this record. And I feel like that just doesn't happen anymore. And
Well, dude, sometimes it depends on your mood too. Like
Yes.
like sometimes a band will send me something and I'll listen to it and I'm doing something else, or I'm not able to sit down and focus, or I'm irritated and it filters through, and I'll listen to the song and I'll be like, yeah, it's whatever. And then I'll go back and listen to it again on a fresh mind, and I'm like, damn, this song fucking rules.
So
And
you're
then
saying I need to send the Word
know-
Alive demo pile again.
Send it again.
no, just
Yeah, send it
get me on a fresh mind.
Send it again.
I mean that happens.
Hit me with the Matrix tool and erase my mind, and then send it, and then I'll be perfect.
That happens to me even with some of my favorite bands.
Me too.
I mean, I'll openly say that, like, you know, Architects, Lost Forever, Lost Together, All Our Gods, holy hell, perfect. Like, I don't think any band in our genre has put out 3 records in a row that have been more perfect, in my opinion. They're one of my favorite bands. And then they took a pretty big step in a different direction on the following 2 records. And admittedly, when they first came out, like, I gave them a fair run and tried to listen to them both, and they just didn't connect with me. And then about a year after each of them came out, all of a sudden it's like, oh, for some reason now I get this record. You know, I didn't completely write them off. I would listen to them every now and then, but at some point, both of them just clicked. And like now, I honestly listen to those records more than the ones before, and I actually appreciate them more than the ones before. But it just, like, I don't know if I wasn't in the right place to hear those records when they came out, or if I just had different expectations. But if, like, I don't know, I feel like it just happens like that sometimes. But so I'm gonna cram 2 questions into each other because I think that they're actually they go well together. Okay.
That's fine. Whatever you want to do, Chris. This is your world. We're just
Josh, you shut the hell up.
Okay.
I'm in charge now.
Ask away.
So I want to know, like, you guys have been a band for a long time. What is the secret to the longevity, and what would be your advice to somebody starting out right now?
Chris, great questions.
Hey, thanks, Josh.
I mean, for me, it's just like, I think it's easier being the singer of the band, being able to be like, I want to keep going. I wrote these songs, and this is like stories from every part of my life. And it's easier for me to be, you know, steering that ship and be like, as long as I'm vibing with this, and if I'm still feeling passionate and I want to do it, then the Word Alive is going to keep going. I know that, like, there are positions within the band that, like, you could go as long as you want, or you kind of be like, well, the guy who writes everything and the singer just left, so I guess that's it. There is, like, a luck factor to that, and the industry as a whole. Like you just said, like, it took you a year to catch on to something. Well, sometimes that happens with bands where by the time people start to latch on to the music, they've already broken up. And, you know, things get appreciated sometimes after the point where they were, like, fired up, ready to go, and, like, most passionate. So a lot has to go right for bands to even have the ability to move forward and keep going. I think the hardest part is, finding partners, I guess, that also are like, because this isn't an easy thing, you have to, like, live, breathe, die, like, your band to, you know, to a certain extent. Like, you're marrying the people within your band.
Absolutely.
And when you're younger, like, not having the tools, not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to set boundaries, like, you're kind of at the mercy of the foundation of the band, you know, that you started as from an internal standpoint. And sometimes you can overcome those internal things. Sometimes band members will leave, and, you know, that's fine. You replace someone and you can keep going as we have. And then sometimes you can't. So I think the most important thing, what I would suggest to bands, if you want to last long, if you want to have a career, is don't just focus on the music and the fun parts. I would communicate things you like, things you love, things you don't like, create boundaries within the band, maybe set up like weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it makes sense for you of like check in with each other. So you're not just, which is so easy to do when you're touring, especially when you're touring like how we used to. It's a lot. We didn't even have time. Like if someone got in a fight, maybe then we went on stage 2 hours later, played the best show we've ever had, and all of a sudden everything's great. And so no one wants to bring down the vibe by bringing up that. And when you do that over and over again for years, eventually you're going to create resentment or there's tensions or whatever it is. So I would say the most vital and important thing is you do not have to all get along all the time. That's not possible in any relationship, but you have to communicate and you have to, I think, like set boundaries. And I think checking in with each other, being in a band is so hard. And there are a lot of bands these days that kind of have like one vision person like guiding the ship. And then you have to have people buy into that vision. Or you have a band who you have to continually make sure you guys are all on the same page, and which
Right.
is so hard to do. And it is impossible to do and maintain if you're not checking in with each other.
Fair enough. I think that the interpersonal relationships is definitely something. I mean, I can't tell you how many times there's been literally exactly what you said, like an argument, a disagreement of some sort that got heated, but we had to go on stage and we had a great show. And exactly that. No one wants to go back and reopen that wound once you've all moved on and you're all running on the high of, being on stage. Nobody wants to go back and do that. And so you let things fester and fester and fester until one day, for no reason at all, someone explodes and it creates a bigger issue. Been there more times than I can count. And have I been the culprit of those explosions?
Yes.
Maybe, but that's not the point that we're here to discuss, you guys. That's not No.
I remember one in particular. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a band that both of you know, Telle, you know very well. It was a crazy blow up argument. And they went on stage. I mean, I'm talking bags were packed. Dudes were going home argument. They went on stage, and I would say to this day, it was probably the most awkward, uncomfortable show of my entire career. Because I was mixing monitors, so like I had to deal with them all. You know what I mean? It was no interaction with each other. They literally were up there playing those songs, and nobody went home, by the way. We finished the tour, but it was very awkward. So anyway, listen, we're gonna go into we like to call it, it's a lightning round, but we call it our day sheet questions. Chris will fire them off, and first thing that comes to your mind.
All right, Telly, we're gonna check our day sheet. So, favorite food stop on tour?
Honestly, I would have to say it's so overrated, but Buc-ee's probably.
Okay.
Nice.
I was expecting you to say, when you said overrated, I was waiting for In-N-Out or something.
Hey,
But
stop it. I like it.
No, you know why I picked Buc-ee's is because they serve like decent
Everything?
food, but still late at night. So like,
Oh, yeah.
touring, it's like, oh, you can still eat a good meal if you need to. Is it my favorite place on earth? Do I glorify it like a bunch of people we toured with do? No. But I'm like, okay, it's always there for you. There's
Yeah,
Motel 6 of touring.
They keep the light on for you,
Yeah,
or whatever the hell. Okay, if you could teleport back in time to one city and re-experience it, where would you go?
Helsinki. We headlined a show in 2017 or 2018, like 900 people in Helsinki, and we're like, how did we even have this many fans here? And they were singing so fucking loud. And then we swore we'd come back as soon as possible, and we have not been able to come back. And
Places like that are tough to get to, though.
Yeah.
They don't end up on tour routings very often.
Yeah, and I'm like, our people are there. Of course. It's like they're so hard to get to. It's like, those are our people.
Funniest moment on tour that you won't get us all canceled, I'm sure.
You know what? I'm gonna go back before the Word Alive. I'm gonna go to Greeley and touring with ABR, and we all put on. There's the video, I think a YouTube video somewhere still, which I wish would get taken down. But we all wore booty shorts, took our shirts off, and came and were like dancing and throwing stuff out to the crowd while ABR played. I mean, there's not much to the imagination left on that stage.
You want that video to die off the internet, and I'm going to find it and put it in the video of this episode.
Please do. Please do.
I think it's their hometown show, and I'll help you out. 2008.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That narrows it down.
Consider it done.
2008 hometown.
A guilty pleasure song or artist?
You know what? I do not have guilty pleasures because I just like what I like.
love that answer.
And I stand on that hard. But I will say the first CD that I bought with my own money that I discovered a band and loved was Lynn, Steal My Sunshine. And
Nice.
which is it's so funny because it's like, it is a piece of my personality for sure. But it's not a song that people would look at and be like, oh yeah, this reminds me of Telle.
I definitely not.
Pre-show ritual.
I like to stretch. I need to do it more in regular life, but I like to stretch. I'd say like 45 minutes, 50 minutes before we go on stage. I usually like to cut the hang, like if anyone's visiting, and I just try to get like locked in with myself. Whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, I try to like think about what I'm feeling. And then like off stage is not how I am on stage, but that is me too. But what I do is I kind of like hyper focus all the things that I'm feeling and I think about them, like whatever's feeling most like bubbling up. And I really think about that. And then that's how I go on stage every day.
Fair enough.
Which I don't know if that's weird or normal. I have no idea. I just try to like fixate, even if it's so bad. I want to only think about it, and so that I can use that to put out energy. I don't know.
No, I think that's totally normal. Whatever gets you to that place is like.
No, I like a little half shot or shot of whiskey. Get the juice flowing. Do a couple of drum tracks.
Why not?
And then go out there.
Tried and true, safest place to shit on tour, and you can't say a green room at a House of Blues because we all know that that's cheating. So where do you go?
Clean and nice and comfortable.
Yeah, where do you go before doors to take care of business?
The closest women's restroom.
There we go. That's the answer I was hoping for, and that is the correct answer. Always the correct answer. Although, don't go there post show because women.
I actually have another answer, dude.
Okay.
What if
I don't think a lot of people will watch this? It won't matter. If the headliner's on it, I'm going to shit in their green room.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because it's the cleanest. The housekeeping always makes theirs the best.
What if you're not at the venue though?
Oh, okay.
I poop a lot. I don't know if you know this. So I don't have the luxury of always choosing the best spot. If I gotta go, I gotta go.
It don't matter.
But
Okay.
I don't know. I'll choose just like a McDonald's or something. Like if I try not to go at like a shitty gas station because I already know it's going to be bad. I try to go to like at least a reputable known
I'm
restaurant.
gonna tell you the nicest ones that I ever was able to locate was like a Macy's at the mall.
But you got to
like
do
the
some
nice-
steps to get to that toilet. You might not have.
You do.
You might not have
You
the
do.
ability. There
You
used
got
to
a
be an
long way to
app-
go.
There used to be an app that showed you where the clean restrooms were.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
I'm going to go back to an answer you already gave. Buc-ee's never fails to deliver on a clean bathroom.
Oh,
I never
that's
shit in
true.
a Buc-ee's.
Oh, they
never seen
literally
Buc-ee's.
outside their bathroom says world famous clean bathrooms.
Yeah, they are like a cult. Like it's like if something's wrong, someone is going to fix it. Like they are not lingering. They pay their employees very well. I hear.
They
And
got
offer
somebody in there
benefits.
flushing
Like,
the toilet for you as soon as you
yeah,
stand up.
That person's probably making more than I am.
If you could front any band for a day, that could be a band that is active or no longer active. Could be members who are alive or dead. What would it be?
And I kill it.
Yeah, of course.
Linkin Park.
Yeah, crush it.
Oh, okay. All right, fair. Good choice. Are you a beach or a mountains guy?
Mountains.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Wow, first one.
I know. Fair enough. I'm a coffee guy through and through. I just downed an entire cup while we were
I've
here.
been trying.
He's a singer,
I've
though.
only
He's a
had two
singer, though.
coffees
All right,
in the
that's
last
fair.
couple months. I've been trying not to drink coffee.
Look, I'm not a guy who loves to party. I don't have any vices in that way, but caffeine
neither.
is my thing. It
Mine too.
has a stranglehold
I love
on
a
me.
Celsius. I love a
Okay.
Celsius.
All right, there we go. There it is.
I like being cracked out. I just don't.
I don't.
That's stronger.
I don't
tell
like to
myself-
drink.
I love that.
I don't like to drink a cup of coffee. I just like to drink one can of something that's equal to 7 cups of
Well,
coffee.
I feel
love-
bad spending like $6 to $10 a day on coffee when it's like I put a Celsius on the rider and I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm good
Nah,
for
I
hours.
love that cracked out feeling.
Yes, I do too. I was
love
just
it.
talking
When
about it
I'm-
yesterday. I'm like,
My
I
eyes are
drank a
like
Celsius
this all day
yesterday at 8
long.
p.m. My girlfriend's like, what the fuck are you
Oh,
doing?
see, I can't do that.
Oh,
I won't ever go to sleep.
I do coffee after dinner all the time.
Nah,
I
I
could go to
can't do
bed
that.
right away.
When I was drinking coffee all the time, I could drink it literally 10 p.m. and be asleep by midnight.
I also have ADHD, so drinking caffeine
it's
actually like chills me out.
Yeah, it's different.
It's backwards.
Yep, it's different.
Okay.
I want to be chewing the fucking meat off my finger with no
Jesus
drugs.
Christ, dude.
That's what I want. I want to just be fucking riding.
All right, 3 more
Go
for
ahead.
you. What's your dream vacation?
Iceland.
What's a song you'll never skip when it comes on?
Never skip.
Yep, you'll never skip it, no matter what.
Probably anything by Limp Bizkit.
Okay, acceptable. And then your Mount Rushmore of artists, your top 4 artists.
Top 4. Okay, I would go Hans Zimmer, Linkin Park, probably As Cities Burn, and Thrice.
Ooh.
That's a pretty solid
Nice.
spread. That covers a
As
pretty
Cities
wide range
Burn.
too.
I
I'm
think
here
so.
for it.
I think so.
All right. Marry 'em, fuck 'em, kill 'em.
Okay.
Cyndi Lauper,
Okay.
Jasmine from Aladdin,
Okay.
and Miley Cyrus.
I'm going to marry Miley, fuck Jasmine, kill Cyndi Lauper.
You came to that pretty quick. I'm actually impressed.
Well,
He did.
I think Miley is fucking dope. I think her like life arc is awesome. I think her voice rules, and she probably is like the most normal of them. One's a cartoon, so
No, not technically. There's a movie. There's an Aladdin live action too.
yeah.
you know?
True.
But no, it was the cartoon.
Yeah, I'd still. My answer would be the same. My answer would be the same.
I think you made the right call. That's fair.
This is my favorite question. Then we'll let you go. If you had 5 minutes to talk to Telle from Greeley Estates or In Fear and Faith, what would the message be?
Get way better at singing and shut the fuck up online.
Nothing like you're gonna be all right or keep going or you're gonna just shut the fuck up.
You do these 2 things and you're good. You do these 2 things, you're good.
Hey, fair enough. Simple. I like it. Dude, Telle, thank you so much for coming on today. And also I just want to say real
appreciate the
quick
time.
that we met, like I said earlier, on one of Texas's first real tours ever. We had no business being there. But from day one, you and the whole Word of Life camp have always been like the nicest and most genuine people ever. And I always really look forward to getting to run into you and chat with you because you're always just the best dude. So thank you for being a kind dude and trying to be a positive force in an otherwise pretty ugly world most of the time. So thank you for being you and doing
Really
what you
ugly.
do and taking the time to hang out with us today, man. Really means a lot.
Of course, love you guys. I'll
Appreciate
hopefully
it,
see you
man.
both soon.
Hey everyone, Chris here, and I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for watching today's episode. You can check out more episodes of Late for Load-In on the right side of your screen and find any applicable links to this episode in the description down below. There you'll also find a link to our Patreon, which is the most direct way to support the show, and it's only $1 a month. Please consider giving this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to follow us on all social platforms, at Late for Load-In, at Chris_TGI, at Josh Carell. See you guys next week.